Looks like we're live. It'll take a second. Now, YouTube will be sending me a notification here in just a minute. Let's see what's going on with that. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Good to see y'all. Expect some new people coming in. We had shit show last night. We had quite a few people ask us some questions and invite them to come on over here and ask them here tonight if there's at YouTube info. So you know the drill. Let me get my link and share it. And what have I done here? Oh, what have I done? Okay, here it goes. Damn. This is a lot to do every time, man. There's pretty technical operating all this. These programs, everything. What's going on? First drum is bubbling away nicely. That's good to hear, man. All right, let me share these links and we can talk about that. That's what we like to hear. Success stories and failures, because we can learn from those. So don't be afraid to admit your failures and talk about them, because that's how we learn, is by mistakes. That's how I learned. I sure made a lot of them. Sure made a lot of mistakes when I first started. I still do. I don't know. Some of them, I guess you consider that watermelon a mistake. It was. Let me check on Marky Mark's page. Make sure you don't have nothing live on. Damn, this dude's got corn growing out of his hair, Mark. That's some crazy shit on your page, bro. That's disgusting. Oh, oh my God, that's fucking sick, man. I hope that's like some plant, not some bodily growth growing out of this dude's head, man. This dude's got some nappy ass hair and he's got shit growing out of it, man. That's pretty disgusting, bro. I'm just gonna say. Oh, that's on the militia page. Damn, the hell we got here, Kevin? That is that 6 row and is that? Oh man, that's bad, bro. Damn, that's disgusting. I thought that was on Mark's page for a minute. I guess I just saw Mark post, and that's about as gross as you can get, man. Y'all go to the militia page and look at that dude, man. That's disgusting, man. That's horrible. Horrible, man. That's man. My hair's been pretty damn dirty before, but I don't think it's ever been that bad. Lord. I like posting these links. When I do, I see some interesting stuff on all these pages. Let me tell you some message. Oh, cell phone wheels. Let's see. Everybody picks now. All my friends pick now to start sending me messages and shit. Sorry, folks. I have to get back with you on that. And a few more to share. So I'm starting out behind it. I have to do this every damn week. Just start out behind. It never catches up. All right. Mark's got a live going, so we'll wait until he's done to post there. Post them about an hour after I can allow to post more. They limit you so many posts per hour. I've discovered. I'm surprised they let me post this, Benny, to be honest with you. I would say that was my last one, I guess. Damn, they just let me post a bunch tonight. Maybe they've catched on. Maybe they realize, hey, it's a pretty good podcast. We should let him post share as many of those as he wants to. Facebook would never do that for me, would they? Damn, they let me know. Shit. Maybe they listened to it and said, hey, this ain't so bad. Maybe we should let this fella post all he wants. You reckon? Facebook would think that about a moonshine podcast? I don't know. We'll see. But that's crazy, though, man. Now go to the militia page and look at that, man. It's towards the top. Kevin posted it. That's 6-row barley growing that dude's head, I believe. Jeez, Pete, that's nasty, nasty. All right, here we go. All right, I'm reading comments now, just getting caught up. What's going on, Detective Patty? What's up, brother? First drum bubbling away nicely. Love to hear that, man. Sounds good. We'll have to talk about that. It ain't cooked yet. No, we gotta let her get finished before we cook it. But that it's bubbling away is good. Hopefully, you got your hydrometer and got your starting gravity pretty good and tight. Don't expect it to finish out dry unless you put glucoamylase in there that we talk about. A lot of times that molasses has a lot of what's called limit dextrins in there, and they don't yeast can't consume them unless you break them down a little further. They're oligosaccharides, meaning they're between 3 and 12 molecules long. Those little too complex, not simple enough for a yeast to eat, but they're easily converted with a little glucose, and that'll finish that dry for you if you want to get a good amount of alcohol out of it. If not, it's not the end of the world. But that sounds good, man. And hopefully you got some of the crushed, coral or the crushed oyster shells in there to help keep it buffered. Calcium carbonate, basically, is what it is. And that'll help keep it buffered. What's going on, Herbie? Clint's game with thin mash, apple juice and rye. An old half barrel. Oh, that sounds good. Corn, rye, oats, and barley. Sounds good. Yeah, done a bit of heirloom corn. Red, white, and blue is great. Jimmy Red, Cherokee White, Howl Blue is a really popular combination. A lot of people doing that. I don't know, the American whiskey. I don't know what you want to call it, but patriotic hooch. I don't know. But yeah, man, it's pretty popular, and it's a good combination because they each bring a uniqueness, right? You know, the red with their oils and their grungy, and the white with their sweet and clean, and the blue with a sweet and grassy. You know, it's a pretty good combo. What's going on, Scott? Good to see you're on time, brother. I don't know, tardy today, huh? Good to see everybody in here. Yes, sir. Life is beautiful, man. Let's hope 2026 brings in a good year for everybody. Yeah, it's good to have you with us, brother. Yeah, you know, most of the people don't listen to the show live. I've talked about this before. You know, we got maybe 8%. I've done the numbers. It's about 8% of the people that listen to it live. So, you know, we may get 20, 30, you know, 50 listening to it, you know, at one point during the live stream, and some people tune in and listen to it a little bit and then, you know, catch it later. But got a lot of second views, a lot of people that watch, you know, watch a little bit of it and say, oh, I'll have to catch the rest of this later. But yeah, we get you know, 700, 800,000, you know, views over the next few days, right? So it's a small percentage listen to it live. You know, I'm kind of glad in a way, because if we had 1,000 listen live and 1,000 questions live, man, shit, I don't. We'd be here tomorrow answering questions with me. So hopefully we ask everybody asks a lot of the same questions. So hopefully a lot of the questions get asked will answer it for a lot of other people. And I think that's why they listen to it a lot, because they get, you know, get those same questions asked again and again. It reinforces it, and it, you know, keep hearing it enough, you know, a lot of the same things, you know, it kind of imprints, you know, and it's easier to remember. So hopefully everybody can get their questions asked if somebody's asking them for you, right? Yeah, I wouldn't recommend heirloom corn for somebody that's just starting out. You know, it can get pretty expensive. Clint's right. You know, it's you know, you can get, you know, yellow dent, you know, for big 50-pound bag for what, $8, $8 to $12, depending on where you buy it. Maybe even cheaper if you get it off a farmer, if you buy a little more volume. So it's cheap as dirt, you know. Well, actually cheaper than dirt. You know, I don't know if you can get 50 pounds of dirt for $8 anymore. Uh, Actually, I don't think you can. Now that I mention it, it's a little bit more expensive than that, ain't it? So it's cheaper than dirt. Damn. Uh, that's crazy to think of it that way, man. I've never really thought of it that way, but hell yeah. You know, that cracked corn, that corn cheaper than freaking dirt that's planted in. That's crazy. But yeah, thank God, you know, that we have a, you know, a lot of corn, and, you know, the Midwest producing corn, and the Central Plains making that wheat and corn for us. Hell yeah. Feed the world. Feed our heads too, a little alcohol. Yeah, heirlooms can get pretty expensive. So it's best to get your feet wet with the cheap stuff, and you know, Yellow Dent makes good liquor. I mean, that's Pappy Van Winkle, you know, some of the best bourbons in the world made with freaking Yellow Dent #2 corn and adjunct grains, right? So, you know, you know, you can't go wrong when you can make some of the best bourbons and whiskeys in the world with the cheapest corn in the world, you know. So that's food for thought, man. It's definitely a lot cheaper, and definitely the way you want to get your feet wet. But once you do, and you want to get some variety, absolutely, you know, trying some heirlooms and some combination of heirlooms. You know, Alan Bishop, he's going to be with us. Going to be on the 20th. So mark your calendars. January 20th, we'll have Alan back on, and he helped or developed a corn. Not helped. He developed a corn years ago, and it's becoming real popular. It's called Amanda Palmer corn, and he basically took a lot of the different corns that he liked and crossbred them and grew them together, and now it's a really colorful look, kind of like a gem corn almost, and very, you know, it's got a lot of the different, you know, characteristics of all the different corns in there, and it makes for really good combination, you know, to use that in along with some of the other stuff. But Yeah, we're gonna have Alan on the January 20th. So definitely, not it's a Saturday. So definitely a night you want to mark your calendars and come on and maybe getting a little in more advanced questions and stuff, if you have, because Alan's a very knowledgeable guy and love having him on. It's gonna be fun. Oh no. No, heirloom corn, it can probably cost, a dollar or two, a pound, where, yellow dent's, what, let's say 40 cents. No, let me do the maths. 16 cents a pound for yellow dent when you're getting it for $8. Well, let's see. 16 times 50 is 8. Yeah. So if you're getting it for $8, a 50-pound bag, and I think that's what Bucky's has it for, and a few others, you get it from farmers cheaper. And I think Tractor Supply is close to 12. So let's just figure on 12. That's 24 cents a pound. So it's 1/10 the cost. It's considerably cheaper and very effective. It makes a good corn again. If you got a thumper, a infuser, use that yellow dent and use our conversion method that we talk about with high temp amylase, your gluco, and then follow up with some cream corn or some sweet corn, pureed up and put in your thumper or your infusers, and it'll give a real good sweet corn flavor and can't beat it, man. It's just, but yeah, the red, white, and blue corn, and they got some truckers corn, lots of different corns out there that have unique flavors and really good. Once you get established and get pretty good at it, then getting into those is a lot of fun. And trying to bring different characteristics forward. That's when you really get into some artisanal, uh, blends and stuff. And that's something you don't see a lot of the big distilleries doing because they really just it's hard for them to afford. And I say 24 cents, 16 to 24 cents, per pound. That's just small 50-pound bag. If you're buying it by the truckload, it's pennies a pound. It's dirt cheaper than dirt, literally. And so they're getting it for next to nothing, and they can make really good liquor out of that with their adjunct grains and their methods. So they're not going to change that because it's really keeps their costs down and the volume up. Now, there will be some changes coming. We've seen in the news lately some distilleries cutting back. Uh, so, and some closing for a year to retool they've been ramping up production for the last 15, 20 years. Now, all of a sudden, the demand softened a little bit. Some people scream tariffs, but it's mostly just the softening in demand. I'm sure tariffs have a few percent impact, but the majority of it is just less people are drinking liquor, and the ones that are drinking liquor are drinking different liquor. So vodka's kind of getting a little bit more popular, and a lot of the younger people are liking juicy, fruity type drinks with vodkas and other stuff mixed, neutrals, kind of mixed and pre-mixed in the can type stuff, and getting away from the sophisticated bourbons and whiskeys and getting to a little bit more simpler neutrals with juices and stuff, which it's each their own. Everybody's got their own favorites, and some people love that. More power to them. I don't mind a good juicy drink, but I love my bourbons, man. Love that bourbon. Yep. 7 Central, 8 East. What's going on, DJ? Good to see you, brother. And I guess this is our first podcast of the new year. So happy New Year to everybody. I guess Wednesday when we were on was, or Tuesday when we were on was day before. So yeah, happy New Year to everybody out there. What's my favorite fruit? Now to cut with, it depends. If I make a neutral, I'm pretty partial to peach. I really like a peach flavor. apple with some, an apple pie. If I'm doing a post, if you're asking about post flavoring with my neutrals, I like peach with my neutrals, and I like apple pie and a little spice to go with that. Those are pretty interesting, good, easy drinks to make, and that a lot of people like. Uh, but hell, I like Damon's Sour Patch Shine that he's got some kind of, I don't know, it's a watermelon sour. I don't know, this last one he put a little vanilla or something in it, and it's sweet and sour at the same time. It's good. I like it. Like eating candy. It's kind of like a Sour Patch candy, but it's got a little hooch in it, so it's pretty good. I like all kinds of different stuff. I've never, but my favorite, of course, is bourbon and whiskeys. I've definitely got a soft spot for that. Yeah, it's the same process for both. There's a lot of them, and if you can run across sometimes somebody making a deal, but I don't think you're going to find them any cheaper than $1 a pound. Most are $1.50, $2 I've seen. And if you have to have it shipped, it gets expensive. So if you can find a farmer that has it and get it directly from them, or drive to somebody that sells it, like Phil, and get it. If you can drive to Phil's and get it, that's definitely the way to go, because he can put it on you pretty cheap and give you great deals. But if he's got to ship it, man, it almost doubles the damn cost. It's, shipping's expensive. Um, so food for thought, something to think about. Tilt hydrometer. All right, you got me googling. I'm not familiar with the tilt hydrometer, so I'm gonna look it up. I don't know if you're talking about a refractometer or. Hmm. Oh, is Tilt a brand name? So it's got a temperature. Now, does it do the conversion for temperature and the gravity, I wonder, since it is the thermometer and hydrometer in one? I've not used one. That's actually the first time I've seen anybody talk about it. This must be something fairly new, but everything. Well, no, there's some article about from 2023. So I'm not wireless and digital hydrometers. 8 colors to choose from. Because everybody wants it in their favorite color, right? That's crazy. Um, as long as they're accurate, I'd say they're fine. I've never used one. It's actually the first time I've ever read about them. But I don't know how much they are. Oh wow, 135 from Northern Brewer. No, bro, that's no. Now I get my hydrometers. They're about $4 when I buy 2 or 3 of them each. They're like $4 each, and they're as accurate as I need to get. People talk about the paper moving in them. It's easy to test it. Just drop it in water, and it should read perfectly at 0 in water, right? Good clean water, distilled water, whatever. So yeah, if you're worried about the paper sliding up and down, which they do, sometimes they don't get glued in there right when they're blowing them. Uh, you can test it in water, and if it's just a little bit low, you can measure it. Just when you read it, just take it into account that it's off that much, and drop down that much to read it, right? So if it's off, as long as you know how far it's off, it still can be calibrated. But yeah, the $135, I don't know. Here's some $52 on AliExpress. It's ordering directly. Timu's got them. I don't know about all that. Timu stuff for $11, 135 to 11. That's some of that Timu stuff. The Timu tilt maybe. But yeah, I think I'll just stick with my cheap ones that break easy. I wish they just make them with a high density plastic or something that wouldn't be break down in alcohol and you can drop and not worry about. But they bank on you dropping them so they can keep on selling them. I think old Mark's done with his live. Give him lease on there. I'll go ahead and post if it'll let me. And well, that's good. All right. Yeah, I think the tilt's a little expensive for my blood, bro. But I mean, as long as you're using one, it's fine. But I'll be honest with you, a good old glass hydrometer, accurate as you need it to be, you know, and proofing hydrometer and triple scale, both just as accurate as you need to be. I mean, you can test it, right? You know, you can test it in known standards, you know, and compare them to each other and make sure. And you can do your temperature conversions. You know, it's not that critical and it's not that much. You know, you don't. As long as it's close to room temperature, it doesn't. You know, a few 10 degrees really doesn't make a lot of difference in the gravity. We're talking hundreds. You know, so it's negligible. But if we get some pretty high temperature swings, then it becomes a little bit more and more. What's going on, Mike? Good to see you, brother. Damn, I'd hate to, they steal that, man. I'd be getting it back. Yeah, I think it's cool as shit. I've seen something about it. I think on Moonshiners, I think Josh and them were trying to do something kind of similar. You know, we were souping up a little, maybe the moped or some shit. But once you get it tuned right, and but you got to get out as much water as you can. You really need to get the 95, you know, uh, percent mark. You know, close to that as you can, and get as much water out of it as you can. And once you get it, once you get that really high proof, 190 plus proof, you can tune an engine to it. It does pretty well. There's a lot of videos out there where they've actually tuned cars and run them with and without to see which would do better. And I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. You see these top alcohol dragsters out there, they ain't burning gasoline. They're top alcohol. They're burning alcohol. So or a combination of alcohol and other things. So yeah, I think it's cool shit, man. It's dangerous as fuck. That's what makes it so cool. Yeah, I can imagine some stretched out lawn mowers, and do they let you take the deck off at least, or do they have to have blades spinning at the same time? They get crazy with it. I know I need one for my yard. I'm tired of. I'm walking. I got a riding mower I ain't used, and it's sat in my garage forever, and needs work. And it's about the most exercise I get these days, pushing that damn mower around my yard. I got about a 30-acre lot, so I just push mow. But sometimes, man, July, August, it used to be a little bit much on this old man. What you up to, brother? Hell yeah, hit that like button. Appreciate it, brother. Hit that like and share this with your friends. If you got some friends doing the drinking and think might be getting interested in getting into the hobby, it's a great hobby. I think it's something that we're trying to get the law changed, so people can distill. It's an awesome hobby, as long as people can do it safely. And that's kind of why we're here, to make sure people do it safely and, not make the mistakes other people made many moons ago, that might cost them their sight and their hearing, their life. There's certain things you can do to make it a little bit safer, but it's we're not really costing the U.S. a lot of tax dollars by making our own hooch, at home. So I think that argument's a bit dated, you know. going on, Mike? Good to have you back, brother. Yeah, it's been a while. Hope you're having a good New Year and had a good Christmas. Yeah, you have to adjust your timing and your carb and your jets. Yeah, you can make it run like a scalded bitch with the right combination of air and alcohol if it's good and high proof. Awesome. So how'd that sour mash? It's your first time ever doing a sour mash? That's awesome. And it gets better but do what we talk about, perpetuating it. And this is probably the Uncle Jesse sour mash, or you doing the traditional sour mash, just with the back set. There's two different ways of doing it. Some people start with all fresh grains and just use back set, and that's the traditional method of doing it. And Uncle Jesse's, simple sour mash is of course, using the spent grains but I modified that. He uses just spent grains and sugar, but we found after 4, 5, 6 generations, all the flavor you're getting out of those grains, anything you're getting out of those grains is gone. So if you can supplement that, with a little bit of fresh grains each time, you can, and maybe 10%. You can take 10% out, put fresh 10% in, and just keep perpetuating it and kind of get in the middle. It's kind of a combination of the two, but it's something that you can keep going, and you don't have to start over every 5 generations or 6, like Uncle Jesse's. So if you can just take about 10% out and add 10%, because you can cook 10% in a little pot on your stove. You don't have to have that big, huge pot boiling. Well, it depends on how much you're doing, but if you got a 20 gallon or less, so you're taking 10 out, you got, maybe 10 gallons of water and 25 pounds. So that's 2.5 pounds, right? That you're going to be cooking each time. So that's easy. 2.5 pounds of corn, you can cook that in, big pot on the stove easily. And just add that every time. If you convert it, break it down, convert it, and do everything, just dump it in there. It's easy to do on the stove. Much easier because you don't have that big ass, 20 or 30 gallon pot cooking and steeping and big coolers and all that. You're doing small batches, and it's a lot easier. Just every time, just cook that 2.5 pounds in the pot, let it cool, dump it in there. If you're done using back set, make sure you let it cool, make sure you run it down to where you get all the alcohol out of it, because if it has a high proof, a lot of people stop at 70 or 80. That's a lot of proof, and you dump that on that yeast, killed all your yeast. So with the sour mash, if you do it right, let everything cool and don't have that high alcohol content, you don't even have to add yeast. You've got the yeast and nutrients. It just builds up, and it's just perpetual. You don't have to add anything to it except if you want to, you're gonna have to add a little bit of sugar, and yeah, once you get it down and get into a certain amount of sugar, amount of 2.5 pounds or whatever 10% would be, adding each time, you can kind of get it fairly consistent, and that's what you're looking for. You're getting a good consistent run. Yeah, we were talking about that. Jeff was talking about that too. There's a lot of good festivals. We got a lot of good festivals out there. And just got to start showing up to them, boys and girls. Two I go to for every year, with 3. I'll go to Maggie Valley every year. I'll go to Beattyville every year, and I'll go to Farm to Bottle every year. Been to Arkansas the last couple of years. Love it down there. Great place, great people. Bit of a drive. If I had to drive myself, I wouldn't be able to do it because I can't stay awake long enough. I don't know if I'm getting narcolepsy or what. you might see me fall asleep here on the podcast one night. You never know, but yeah, I can't. After a couple hours on the driving, I'm falling asleep at the wheel. So I got to be real careful on how far I drive. So I'd have to have somebody with me or driving, or I'd have to fly. So I can't wait to see how that sour mash turns out, brother. What's up, JJ? What's up, KP? Good to see y'all. Hope y'all having a good weekend. Good seeing all my brothers in here. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun, man. Drag racing those lawnmowers, or just make your own. I mean, I guess if they allow modified, you can kind of stretch them out, make them a little safer, and make it a little less top heavy, maybe a little wider wheelbase. But yeah, I imagine you can get fucked up pretty quick on one of them lawnmowers pretty quick. I mean, I've seen I've seen them race those things. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff too, man. That can get pretty dangerous. Yeah, it reminds me of a story when I was living in Florida. There was a bunch of people that bring their four-wheel drives down on the beach, and they had these big Baja tires, balloon tires, and stuff, and they'd go through these sand dunes and kicking up the sand and everything. And I was in a Wagoneer, old Jeep Wagoneer, 70, maybe a 78, 79 model, 81, something like that. Is about 83, and I was about a 78, 79 model. That was. I've had a couple, few of them. I wished I still had one, man. Them damn things, $100,000 now. You seen the new ones? Crazy, but it had that low range. It wasn't. It was geared and had the emergency drive in the glove box. You could turn it, and each wheel would spin independently, right? But it also had a low range. Kind of like some of the floorboard drives with low range, and but it was a little bit different, and the way it's independent, and yeah, they're pretty good, and they're really synchronous. They don't knuckle up on you a lot when you have four-wheel drive and you're making turns and stuff. They're really smooth when you did it, but they were blowing through this loose sand, and I'm like, shit, watch this shit. So I go through there and I stop right in the middle of it. And they all laugh. They're like, man, you'll never get out of there. Man, I reached down, put it neutral, and reached down, pull that thing in low range, reached the glove box, turn it in independent, drop that sucker down into second. Oh, barked that fucker out of there. Their fucking jaws dropped. Man, that thing squeals coming out of there. They freaked them out. Man, they had like a 360 in them. Yeah, it did pretty good. It freaked the shit out. They couldn't believe it. What the hell? Because it had like regular, just mud tires on it. It didn't have no big balloon tires and all that shit. I fucking barked it right out of there. They couldn't believe it. They thought sure they'd be pulling me out. Yes, you can. Yeah, just rinse them out, and if you worry about bacteria buildup, just boil them. At the same time you're boiling your water for anything else, just throw that little pouch in there and boil it up, and clean it up a little bit if you need to, and or just boil it after each use and rinse them. I just rinse mine after each use, and when I'm ready to boil water for my next mash, I just throw that in there and let it sit while I boil the water up, and then take it out, throw it in the bucket, and then then you want to do what? You want to pH your water down. A lot of people don't pH their water down before they start doing their conversions, and it really helps. It really does. It helps to break those bonds up, because we're bond breaking, and that's basically what we're doing when we make simple syrup, right? Inverted sugars, we're using acid to help break that bond, and that low pH is the same process. It's the same thing. We're instead of just breaking a sucrose, which is a glucose and a fructose bonded together, with table sugar sucrose, which is fructose and glucose bonded together. We invert that, we break it up into a monosaccharide, and that's what we're doing. And when we make that, and same thing when we do conversions, we're breaking those bonds, and that having that slightly acidic, 5.3 certainly helps a lot in that. So yeah, I just boil the bag in there, pull it out with the tongs, and throw it in the bucket, and then start adding a little citric acid. Or I use a blend. I use where I make my wines. I use a winemaker's blend. It's got like malic acid, citric acid, and tartaric acid in it, and and it helps get that pH down there where you want it to be. But yeah, you just reuse them, and yeah, and it's a protective measure. It's not something that you want to throw in Oh shit, my pH is low. Let me throw these in there. No, it's too late for that. You got to add something a little bit more fast acting. This is just a buffer. It's a slow process. It's a slow, as the acids are formed during fermentation, which natural process, organic acids are going to be created. It just starts eating away at this calcium carbonate, and it just breaks it down, and it helps buffer the acids. So it works really well. They're cheap as hell, and they're great in gardening too. If you're doing gardening and grow tomatoes and stuff, they're great to. I use the dust out of the bottom of the bags and help break that around my tomatoes when I plant them and stuff, and it works good. $33, 50 pound of Jimmy Red, and 67 for Hickory King. That's a damn good price, bro. And did you get that from the farmer? Yeah, that's a good deal, man. Yeah, most people for Jimmy Red, it's at least 50, $75 minimum for most resellers. Now for farmers, yeah, you can get a pretty good deal. Or, if you get Philby, there's somebody that doesn't have to, ship them to you, but if you can get it without the shipping, you can get a pretty good deal on it. But yeah, it's a good deal. Now a little bit more than $1 a pound for the Hickory King, but those are all good deals, bro, for sure. Yeah, it is fairly standard. They've got it down where varying. Different heirlooms are going to vary in their starch content, their sweetness, their mineral content, their oil content. So each heirloom is going to be different in that regard. But yeah, for the big, huge guys, yeah, they've got to, it's just economically sound for them to not only use very inexpensive corn because that's all you need to make the ethanol with and give it a decent corn flavor. It just it makes economic sense when you're making hundreds of thousands of barrels, right? So it's if you think bourbon is expensive now and whiskey is expensive now, if they had to do it with heirloom corn, shit, you'd be paying a lot per bottle. It'd cost them a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They boycotted, and that's fine. It'll come back. But for every dollar we lose on them not buying our liquor, we're gaining 10 on everything else. So it's kind of a trade off. And somebody's got to end up paying the brunt of it. And unfortunately, the booze industry got but it's tax enough, and yeah, it'll get straightened out once they straighten up, and start doing fair trade practices. That's a small price to pay, I think. But I don't want to get too political. I always do grains, rum, or agave. Hell yeah. First ever and only sugar wash using organic cane sugar for something neutral. That's awesome. Yeah, make sure you put oyster shells in there, and you know, rum is kind of a sugar wash. Basically, agave is a sugar wash. It's just a different, source. Um, but grain, it's a little bit different. But yeah, rums, most of your rums with the molasses and it's just a different form of sugar, a different refinement of sugar. Agave is just basically sugar from a different plant. But yeah, sugar washes aren't. I mean, a lot of people frown on them, but I mean, shit, if you're in a tight spot and you ain't got nothing else that to ferment, you want to make a drink, you can always make some sugar, make a neutral, and run it through that column and boost that proof up high and get as much ethanol out of it as you can. Then proof it down with water, and it's sure it's got a little bit of a bite, but I mean it's something to drink, right? It gets you drunk. I mean, I'm not above it. Hell, I've done it. When times get tough, and I just wanted something to drink, and I didn't have nothing to drink. And I didn't want to go buy corn and go through all the cooking process and doing all that. Yeah, I make quite a bit of sugar wash. And I did a lot of thin mash, it's basically a sugar wash with cornmeal in it, and for flavoring, because it wasn't getting converted or anything. It was just there for flavoring. And it's, hell, I wasn't too proud. I drank a lot of that. But now that, now that I'm doing all grain conversions and everything, yeah, that's definitely a step above. It's marketably better for those that are wondering. Yeah, it's better for sure. All right. Clint said that. That's pretty cool. I just like my little cheap $4 float. That tells me all I need to know. Yeah. Yeah, it gets expensive, brother, for sure. It adds a lot of cost to it. Just go see Phil Billy over here. If you know how, yeah, man, just go see Phil. He can hook you up, especially if you're getting a bunch. He can make you good deals, bro. Yeah, and commercial beer making, and a lot of the beer, people. I'd say in the wine community, and it's, I don't want to say snobby, but kind of, they look down on us moonshiners, but we're just distillers. We're not just making moonshine, right? We're making rums, we're making tequilas, we're making whiskey, we're making, sour mash, we're making vodka, we're making a lot of stuff. They make beer, or they make wine. We're making brandies, and we're taking their beer and making it better. I've never been a big fun beer drinker. I'd much rather drink the whiskey than the beer. But now wines and brandies, I like my wines. Yeah, I saw they were wireless and stuff. That's pretty cool. Yeah, we don't get political in here. Sorry, now save that for somewhere else. Your political activism. Don't come in a moonshine group with that. We don't care. And maybe if they quit sending their drugs over here and killing our people, we wouldn't have to do that. How about that? Yeah, we don't get political here. In fact, let's just say bye bye. I doubt they're going to ever contribute to our podcast. So yeah, I mean something like that. I don't, it's people can voice their opinion, but this ain't a news talk show or something like that where you can just jump in and comment off topic. We talk about distilling in here. We don't give a shit about all that other stuff. I mean, I care, but you know, there's people with different opinions out there that may not agree with what my thoughts are, and that's fine. I'm not one of those people. I'm old school. We can agree to disagree and still, have a drink and laugh and still be friends for this day and time. Everybody's got to be polarized. Either you agree with me or you're not my friend. I'm gonna cut you off Facebook. Okay, bye. You know, so people got to be able to learn to agree to disagree and learn how to debate like we used to be able to critically think, right? And not listen to what other people are trying to tell us so much. As far as that's concerned, they've been sending so many damn drugs into our country and was took control of that country illegally. They had a democratically elected individual who they didn't allow in office, who the people wanted, and when the in our hemisphere, no, we're not going to allow that. We're not going to allow terrorists to use that as a foothold, and a place to start here. So, and I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, you should definitely agree on that. We don't want them sending fentanyl up here and killing our children and our people, to the tune of hundreds of thousands. We had Al Qaeda killed 3,000 people, and we go over there and fight a war for 20 years. But they send drugs up here from South America and kill hundreds of thousands. We do nothing, not anymore. So that shouldn't be political. That should be just common sense and something everybody should be able to agree on. And if you don't agree with that, you're in favor of people dying. I mean, that if you disagree with that, I guess you're in favor of Americans dying. You kind of crazy. Think about what you're thinking. But yeah, I keep a few too, brother. $4 a piece. I think that's what I paid for the last ones. I got $4 each, free shipping. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you shared that with us, man. What's going on, Cart? Good to see you, brother. Hope you have a good weekend. Yeah, like I say, with the winemakers, oxidation is an important thing, and there's certain times that they want to introduce, oxidation for um, reactive purposes, and when they degas and do things like that. So, but they want to control when they do the oxidation. So I can see, in a closed fermentation or something like that. But at the same time, I think they've also got little, you know, uh, valves on the side. They can just dump a cylinder full without really getting much oxygen in there. But yeah, I can see them, especially on big, huge vats and stuff, and larger commercial outfits. But for me, at home, 150 some dollar tool like that, I don't know. It's a luxury. It's like that Milwaukee over a Ryobi, or something like that. But yeah, but they both do the same thing. So I like the little $4. It's cheap. It's I go through one or two a year, and half of them I don't know how in the hell they get broke. It's like the cat knocks them off the damn, you know, or I set one on a dehumidifier and I guess it vibrated off and stupid shit happens. Oh, you fine, Mike. Don't worry about it. And it ain't a us versus them thing, man. If you don't agree with that, you think it's okay for. I mean, if you think about it, that's chemical warfare on the American people. They're sending tainted drugs that are killing people, and that's chemical warfare. I don't know how you view it, but that's what it is, right? So I'm behind. I'm getting political. I don't even do that. What's going on, Mark? Shadow, what's up, brother? Yeah, drink smoker, awesome. Yeah, I've seen those. Been to them fancy bars. I know what they are. Yeah, I need to get me one of those, man. I tell you what, I've been pushing my damn mower too long. I'm getting too old for that. And I'm getting behind. Damn, I see that and it's like, man, I talked about that 20 minutes ago. What's going on, Brian? Good to see you, brother. Speaking of which, yeah, I got a monitor. What's going on, Curtis? Good to see you, brother. Oh, traditional. That's cool. That's good. It's different than the traditional way. That's for sure. It's not quite as hot. It's not quite as efficient, maybe, as far as cost wise. That's pretty good. You definitely getting the most out of your grains when you do it the USJJM method. But UJSSN. But yeah, it's got a bit more hot. We're using more sugar. Yeah, it is what it is. I don't want to get political and talk about things, but and the U.S. and Canada's got pretty close trade agreements and always has. And there's been some differences, but certain countries like China and certain other countries just totally break it off in us, man. It's so lopsided. 100% differences, and they tariff the shit out of the stuff we send there, but they don't expect us to tariff anything they send here. Used to tariffs was how the government made its money before taxes came along. I mean, yes, liquor tax was the first tax, but tariffs, that used to be what funded our government. And I think it's wrong, for a lot of, like medicine, for example. Here in America, American pharmaceuticals can make a drug and charge hypothetically the American people $100 a dose, and then they'll send it over to overseas to China and Europe and sell it for $10 a dose. How's that? How's that right? Yeah, I might be a little bit late, but better late than never. I definitely need it. Saturday, boys. Well, it's about halfway through, man. Damn, made a whole hour. It's definitely time for shot. He get in there and get me some of that coffee shine. Mark sent me. That stuff's good, man. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I love coffee shine for some reason. Mark Morgan makes some good coffee shine and other shines, but I like it coffee. For somebody not a coffee drinker, I probably drank 10 cups in my life. But that coffee shine, I like the it's got the coffee flavor without the bitter, and it's of course got that alcohol in there. It's always good to see Kenny. Yeah, Crown's always it's been a little bit sweet. My ex liked Crown, and I like getting them little blue bags, and always kept my weed and shit. But yeah, it's always been a little bit on the sweeter side for me. Yeah, damn, am I that far behind? Shit, 20 minutes. Damn. Yeah, hell yeah. I've actually made some candy cane shine. That old Santa shine. Put them little what do they call them? Little cinnamons and spearmint candy canes in there. Hell yeah. Run it through a coffee filter after you do it. Get all them little floaties out of there. Pretty good, actually. I like it. Spearmint's good. I like the spearmint. All right, brother. Take it easy, DJ. Have a good Saturday and a good weekend, brother. We'll see you Wednesday or Tuesday. I keep thinking Wednesday, Tuesday. Yeah. Take it easy, brother. You hope you're probably already gone. Damn it. Oh, got a little rough, huh? Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't mind the Crown. It's, I've drank the shit out of it. Little on the sweet side, but I like, a wheated bourbon, so I'm okay with a little bit of sweet. Rough day today, yeah, I'd say, man. We put a few away last night, didn't we? Had a good time. It was kind of like the old time, shit show, man. It wasn't a lot of drama, and I had a lot of the not the old crew, but a lot of people from the back in the day on there. And it's always nice. Yeah, it's good show. A lot of ribbing each other. That's a lot of fun. We're like brothers, man. We'll argue and fight, but at the end of the day, we all love each other, man. We all respect each other. We all want the same things. You know, and so it's all good. That Canadian Club missed. Tums, that's good. Yeah, that'll work. But yeah, you get this crushed oyster shells. It's got a little bit of coral in there too. It's all calcium carbonate. It's fine. Um, yeah, that and some of that diatomaceous earth. Put that in there to help keep the bugs out and limit the slugs and other things in your soil. But yeah, that the dust off these shells, they help a lot for that spotting and rot spots. I guess they call it spotting. It's just calcium deficiencies. But yeah, it's good for your garden. Yeah, Canadian Club. It's yeah, everybody's got their preferences. A lot of people, wouldn't touch a Beam or wouldn't touch Jack Daniels and a lot of the traditional stuff. And that's I don't mind it. I like Evan Williams and Heaven Hill. I'm kind of for a cheap for a cheap bottle. I think Evan Williams bottled and bond is about as good a deal as you can get. For a quart of that, it's pretty damn cheap. And it's not the best. No, it's not going to compete with your Wellers and all those. And it's just not. But it's inexpensive and for just an everyday drinker that's not a special occasion kind of thing. Hell yeah, I mean it's good stuff. So that Heaven Hill bottle and bond, but both real good in my opinion. But everybody has different likes. But I think that's about one of your better values. Um, but I like a lot of being from Kentucky. I drink a lot of different whiskeys and bourbons and stuff, and even some of the old stuff, old Fitz, and some of that other stuff is not bad. Back in the day, I wasn't so fond of it, but I don't know if it improved or my taste changed. But some of that other stuff's not so bad. I got a pretty well stocked bar. I need to get some of these special releases that I can go get for a pretty cheap price. It's not cheap in comparison to like a Evan Williams or anything like that, but a lot of the distilleries around here will release stuff in like their antique collection and other things like that you have to pretty much go to the distillery to get it. And you pay 50, 75, 125 a bottle, and people are like, oh, that's crazy. But look what the secondary market is on some of those bottles. Those 100, 25, $50 bottles. People buying them for thousands. In the secondary market. It's crazy that there's a lot of people out there, but they're just not everybody's able to go to the distillery here in Kentucky and get them. And it's either drive here, fly here, or just buy it off somebody online that's got it. And hell, there's a guy does he does podcasts and live streams of stuff. Him just going to different liquor stores all over the Midwest and buying liquor and going to their back shelf and buying their top bottles, allocated bottles, and he makes enough money just driving around doing that to pay for the bottles. Right? What a brilliant idea, man! Everybody's buying his liquor. What an idea. Yeah, Jack and Coke, it's once you mix the Coke in there, it is what it is. A lot of Jack and Cokes back in the days, and that's about the only way to. It's not. I'm not going to say it's fit to drink straight, but yeah, I like Evan Williams better. I do. I like that Evan Williams, and I just got in that. It was 15 minutes ago you said it, but I like that Evan Williams. It's a good grain bill. It's good flavor for the money. That 100 proof bottle and bond as you need. It'll get the job done for sure. Yeah, it is what it is. Starner's not. I'm trying to think of what his name is. I'm thinking of England. I can't remember what his name is. I try to. I know I'm familiar with Mark somebody. I can't remember what his last name is, but he was. Wasn't he in British Parliament or something? But yeah, he's. I'm not. Trying to get political or anything, but it's hard not to notice what's going on in Europe, and it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. Crime and lawlessness and the ruination of the city and the peace. It's hard not to notice. Some of the countries that allowed limitless migration are now falling and crumbling, and the countries that didn't allow it are peaceful, and you can walk down the sidewalk still. So there shouldn't be a D or an R, before somebody that should be in favor of having peace and tranquility over lawlessness and crime. And unfortunately, they've made it a political agenda, and it's crazy. How can you be so blind? Even Iran is trying to get Islam out of there. It's radical. It's it shouldn't be whether you're Democrat or Republican. If they've waged war on American people, they don't give a shit if you're a D or an R. I don't care if you're a donkey or an elephant or independent. They hate y'all just the same, right? So get your head out of your ass. But let's not talk about that. What's going on, Mr. Phelan? Yeah, they got to talk about politics on there. I shouldn't. But I mean, it shouldn't be political. When it comes to things like that, it shouldn't come down to politics at all. But they try to polarize everything. Yeah, I remember Mike being a napper. Yeah, man, I'm an arrowhead collector. Got some old stuff. Yeah, I've had some pretty bottom shelf stuff too, man. I went down to Mexico and spent some time down in Mexico and had some bottom shelf tequila. Talk about rock gut, man. It was horrible, man. I drank a bunch of shots too, and that bar owner's like, "Man, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great now. Have another." And they're like, "You sure?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah." Nice tipping, waitresses and stuff good. And he said, "Man, drink this instead." So he started giving me a little better quality, tequila, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's good." And they were wondering how in the hell I was still able to talk sober and function after 20, 30 shots. I came home with like 30 some shot glasses from that bar. They little plastic ones they let you keep, Cozumel, and I think probably I drank 30, 40 shots that night. Probably about a quart. And about got in a fight. Some dude flirting with my old lady. He about ended his life that night. They threw his ass out of there. They didn't want any of this wild haired man going crazy. I got you. I got you. I tell you what, women a lot of times prefer just a neutral with something, like a juice, and A lot of people are going with that these days. Neutrals. Get you a good sugar, put it on a column, run it, make some sugar vodka, and make a neutral out of it, and then proof it down, mix it with some juice. Yeah, man. I bet he would. What do you think? He better. Him old Santa said that. Give you the discount. A single malt, you either love them or hate them, right? Kind of different. Yeah, we used to drink a lot of Jägermeister in the day. Awesome. What you got going, brother? Oh, Naya made even more comments. I'm just getting to those. Hell, I'm glad I banned her. Or whoever. Yeah, we don't need that shit around here. Anybody that comes in and talks about stuff like that and the podcast totally unrelated. I hate banning people and I hate taking people's voice away and censoring, but I'm also not gonna be trolled anymore. So, and those are the people that, if you disagree, they start reporting you, mass reporting you and getting your shit taken off Facebook and stuff. So we don't need that crap. We've been dealing with a little bit of that lately. And yeah, we don't need that. That's why we really, Clint and I need to let everybody know, when it comes to our conversations, we need to keep it pretty much, we'll just stray a little bit and talk about politics, but we got to eliminate any kind of racism. Like about a month ago, we had somebody coming in using the N word and all that. We can't control that, but we can take care of it. We do. We'll ban them out. We don't condone that thought, that kind of speech at all in here. Drugs, when it comes to how to synthesize or make or what goes into the chemistry of it. No. So try to keep it on topic. Every once in a while we'll stray a little bit. That's the beauty of what we do off the cuff, but yeah, let's try to keep it, Facebook and YouTube friendly. Um, Billy had somebody reported something supposedly that was said on the 23rd and about drugs, and he's like, I don't even know if I posted on the 23rd, and so I don't know if it's something somebody commented on the post that he made on the 23rd, or something that was said in here on the 22nd, because that was the night that we had a bunch of people dropping the M bomb and using the N word a lot, and but that they wouldn't have said it drugs if that was the reason. I can see AI maybe picking that up, but I deleted it, so their post is gone. But you can't, Facebook can't allow people to sabotage the live stream by coming in making those comments and then turning right around and reporting it and getting it taken down. No, they got to fix that policy, or they're going to get their ass sued more, right? They've already had to settle with Trump and other people for many millions of dollars for taking their free speech away. It's you know they let Joe Rogan come on here and talk about drugs and all that shit. We don't. We're just talking about alcohol. So, um, oh yeah, many nights I drink a whole bottle of Jager. Venison jalapeno summer sausage. Damn, that sounds good, bro. Venison trail bologna. Hell yeah. Damn, I like the sound of that, man. I love me some summer sausage for sure. Yeah, I used to get my deer processed when I get them. I take them up in Georgetown, just north here, Fayette. Got a guy up there, Highview, I think Highview Meat. They do a real good job, and I highly recommend them. Pretty expensive, People are like, hey, you pay $300, damn, I understand that. And I'm like, well, they make me burger, they make me summer sausage, they plug all my roast with fat. They do it right, man. So yeah, And I don't take little does in there. I'm taking big deer or big does. You know. Absolutely. We can discuss anything. I just, I can't imagine anybody that wouldn't be against, eliminating drugs being brought into the country. That shouldn't have a D or an R or an I. There's certain things that just everybody should agree on, but I don't know, it's you know, yeah, it's hard to talk about it without talking about it, right? But I do try. I think that is some common ground that I think basically a lot of people once you just sit down and talk it out. I think we agree on a lot of things. We might not like the messenger sometimes and the person that's doing things sometimes and or how they do it or what they say. Um, but sometimes you just got to kind of focus on the results. But yeah, that's if everybody agreed, we wouldn't even need elections. Right. Yeah. And it true. And it's now these days you got to pick between who you like and stick with them. But it's hard to determine the truth. And with AI, hell, it's going to get even tougher. Yeah, I follow what you're saying, JJ. You cool, bro. Not everybody's going to agree on everything, and that's when people can. I don't know how many people I try to talk to politics about, and they're like, "Oh my God, now we just can't talk about this." They just want to shut you out, and it's like, well, why can't we talk about it? It's something we used to be able to talk about. Why just be calm and get to the point. And then once you talk about it, they're like, well, I kind of agree with that. Well, okay, we're not so polar after all. And then you start, just using logic and speak logically, and not get all emotional about feelings and stuff. And you know, yeah, yeah. It's we had it straightening up, and then we just pulled out like an idiot, gave up Bagram Air Force Base, and and the way it happened was horrible. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to talk about it. Right, and it's not. It's and I don't want to have all these combos, boys. But yeah, it should be. It should be common sense that people that are coming into your country, if they want to wish you harm, anybody that says, well, we should allow them in anyway, that's just silly. I don't give a damn if you got a D, I, or or R before your name. If you think that we should allow people that want to wish us harm in our country, then you're just wrong. I don't care. You know, we're not a softer, gentler nation that is accepting everybody and even those people that wish to kill us. I'm sorry that anybody does that. That's just silly. And I think that a lot of politicians that are allowing that in Europe and stuff are bought and paid for it. What else is their motivation to allow an invaders in? They need a Trojan horse. So that's I don't think that should have any bearing whether you're Democrat, Republican. It's either you know that's polar. It's either Christian or and it's not just religion. I don't think that Islam is a religion. It's a theocracy and it's a form of government and it's never been good. They've invaded a lot of countries. Look how many countries they've invaded since the in the 19th century, in the 20th century, and it's just not. It's it's not a positive thing. It's not a good thing. I'm sure they might think it is, but you know, all the other religions in the world are all coexist without any issues with each other. But that particular one says or us or death, and I don't think that's a good theocracy to follow. But I think that yeah, yeah, we don't want to get too much into all that. Yeah, I buy them 3 or 4 at a time. I think the last time I got three is $12 for three of them, $4 a piece. Yeah, that's what I do it. I'm gonna have to get my riding more fixed. I'm gonna have to find a little bit different. Maybe I get a treadmill and be able to walk in here in the cool. But man, it gets 100 degrees and humid. It's just too much on my old self to get out there and push that mower anymore. This year was the first year I had to. It takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to mow my grass, and this year I had to take a little bit of a break. In about halfway. And it's the first year I've had to do that. And it was hot as fuck and humid as hell. So hopefully, I don't. Turtles. That's funny. Yeah, turtle meat's interesting. It's each piece has a little bit different flavor. Yeah, NAFTA gave us the shafta. That's it's thing about America is we always vote in somebody every 4 years. A lot of countries will have leaders in for their lifetimes or 10, 12 year terms or we change every 4 years and our views can change drastically every 4 years as a result of it. So we're kind of unpredictable in that regard. And agreements prior, you know, uh, presidents and offices make, 8, 12 years from now, they may not, they may think differently. Um, but one thing I agree, and I think everybody should agree on, is it's very critical for clean water. And that, but the problem is, most of the pollution that goes into our waters isn't happening in North America. It's happening on the other side of the planet, and and it's hard for us to regulate what they do. But yeah, it's our oceans and keeping our oceans healthy and our rivers and streams clean is imperative. It's our life. Without it, we're gone. I like it. I like candy canes in there, man. I've tried it, a few years back. This is Santa Shine thing, just yeah, and it's actually pretty damn good, especially the spearmint one. Now the cinnamon's okay, but the spearmint ones, the green ones, they're pretty damn good. I like spearmint. It makes it goes real well in the shine. Yeah, it's good. It's seen up better days and some down days. Some people get into the drama. I don't. When the drama starts, and you've seen in the past when that shit starts, it's like, well, gotta go, folks. Everybody have a good night. I don't like it shit too old to deal with it. I don't like the stress of it. Don't like listening to it. I just got better things to do. I'm not a big drama fan. Some people enjoy it. Some people, thrive on it, and some people, hate it and try to stamp it out. I think most of us don't like it. And what seems like drama to us is us trying to maybe sometimes be over dramatic, trying to get rid of it and eliminate a lot of the bullshit that happens. And so sometimes that can get misconstrued. But yeah, I try to get out of that. Anytime that shit rises, I'm just like, yep, I'm out. Hell, that don't sound like fighting me. Sounds to me like they just fact checking. I mean, sometimes it's easy to get misinformed, and especially in moonshine. Let's get back to the topic, folks. Uh, in moonshine, there's so much disinformation out there that a lot of times, people read it and they think that it's true. They read it, and it's they read it on one of the groups, so it has to be right, right? And there's a lot of misinformation out there. So especially moonshine, there's a lot of misinformation out there. No, I don't get y'all's fighting. Y'all disagree and talk about it. Now we talking about a trigger or liquor? We can't talk about them triggers on here either. Guns, that's another band. We try not to talk about guns. I know been an episode or two. It wasn't mine. It wasn't on the militia, but on another podcast, somebody brought one of their guns out and was showing it off, and boom, just like that, delete. They wasn't putting up with that. And they wasn't shooting or nothing. But you go on there and look. There's all kinds of videos of people shooting that have a million, 2 million, 10 million viewers. But all of a sudden, you bring out a rifle on a podcast, boom, you're off. Nope. So guns kind of a we need to start out with a little list of shit we can and can't talk about. Oh yeah, Kessler. I like Evans. Evans is a Heaven Hill, uh, and I think Heaven Hill makes some really good stuff. It used to not be the best, but they've really upped their game in the last 20 years, man. And it's some of their premium brands. It's some of the best out there. Trying to think of all the different ones they got. I mean, I don't have to pull it up so I don't get it wrong. But I know that yeah, I'm 21. So there we go. Evan Williams, Elijah Craig. There it is. Elijah Craig's one I was trying to think of. That's a pretty good mid shelf. I would call it a mid shelf. Evan Williams probably close to the bottom shelf. Evan and Elijah in the middle. Uh, but yeah, they've got some good stuff. That Elijah Craig's pretty good stuff. And Old Fitzgerald, I was talking about earlier. Good stuff. Yep, they got some pretty good offerings, man. But the Elijah Craig, it's won some pretty big awards. I've got a bottle that was from the batch that basically won best bourbon a couple of years running, and yeah, it's definitely good stuff. Trying to think of like A 1050 or B 952, some shit like that. I can't remember, but um, yeah, it was. It's I've not opened it. It's probably worth 150 $200 now. It's gone up quite a bit over time. But yeah, it won bourbon of the year, and everybody's going crazy over it. Barrel proof, not the small batch. Yeah, Elijah Craig's good. Good stuff, man. Evan Williams, Elijah Craig's damn good. It's funny that I just mentioned that. You said it 20 minutes ago, and here I just scrolled down to that, Mark. That's crazy, isn't it? But yeah, Elijah's good stuff. Well, yeah, that's a good question. I'm not seeing any Facebook posts. I didn't notice that until just now. Yeah, Mark Morgan's on Facebook, so yeah, we're getting some. Just most of us. most everybody's going to YouTube, so they don't have to deal with that. But I think a lot of maybe our past Facebook people were on Fieldbilly's page. So yeah, I'm noticing a lot fewer posted. So we're gonna have to put a note on Fieldbilly's page where they can watch us because we're not able to post his right now. He got hopefully temp banned. We got to talk to him and see what the dealio is, and maybe send him a little letter from our attorney and see what see what they have to say because it's he didn't post anything about drugs. There was no drugs in the 22nd. It's supposedly on the 23rd, November 23rd, that it happened, and he didn't recall making any posts, and there wasn't nothing to stand out. I did a show the 22nd, so they were thinking maybe it was my show, and then just got reported the next day, when people were watching it and stuff. So we rewatched our show. It wasn't a typical show like tonight. Um, and so, and maybe that's actually why they let me share more. Maybe they realized, hey, this isn't a bad podcast. We've been limiting them, and I was able to share to more groups tonight than I normally do without having to wait. So that's one positive note. But yeah, we got to make sure Phil gets his channel back, man. He's got 500,000 viewers. It's his living. So you know, maybe we need to get a bunch of people, counter protesting. Bring Phil's page back. Why did you delete it? You can't allow people to come in and comment and sabotage you. That's hell. I just sabotage Facebook. Well, they posted on Facebook. Let's shut Facebook down, right? I mean, that's the same principle they're using. Is somebody comes in and comments on a stream and they shut your stream down because of that. Well, why can't we shut Facebook down because somebody made that comment on Facebook? Same principle, right? So maybe they need to back off their principles a little bit. Live by the sword, die by the sword, Mikey. Or Mark, is that you? Is that key? I was thinking about that too. A little programmable, a little camera mounted on it, sitting there on your cats and air conditioning and running it. That wouldn't be too hard to do either. But I've seen my neighbor. I've seen Wes's neighbor when I was in Ohio State with Wes, and he had a neighbor. It's got a little robo mower, man. It just drives back and forth on the yard. And I guess they got like a dog fence thing maybe that tells it where to go and where to stop, turn, and I don't know, but they're just programmed in maybe. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's just like a little Zumba, like a little vacuum, except it's outside back and mowing. Pretty cool. Yeah, and it shouldn't be polar. When it comes to certain moral, things, I think I think everybody should agree. I think everybody should agree less taxes is good. I think everybody should agree killing Americans is bad. And sending fentanyl into our country is bad. I don't give a shit who you are. You should agree that, and allowing people that are criminals into our country that wish to us dead is not a good thing. I see that everybody should agree with that. I just don't see how that could be polarized. Now as far as abortion or marriage rights or anything like that, yeah, I can see where, but differing opinions. Me, I don't care. Whatever people want to do, less government to me is better. You know, and that's my view. And you know, they have to answer to the Lord. So let that be their guiding light, and their decision maker. But there's a lot of things people should be able to agree on without having to put politics in front of it, and for some reason, a lot of Americans are under the assumption that people have a right to move here and live here, and people don't. You know, try to move to any other country in the world. Just try to up and move and see what their government says. Even third world countries are like, hell no, you're not coming in here. You got to prove that you have enough money to get by on, B, a job, You're not going to be able to buy land, or there's so many different regulations and stipulations. So nobody just allows you to come in and live, and the same has to apply for us. And it's, nobody has a right to live here. If you can't contribute to America, then you don't belong in America. I'm sorry, that sounds selfish, but you know why would we just burden ourselves with people? Why would we just allow people to come in here that are a burden, that just drain the system? And it is a huge drain on our system. We can't take care of our veterans because we're taking care of illegals. I'm sorry, that's just wrong. And I think that, I don't care if a D or an I, or R goes before your name. You should all agree on that. That's not good. But other things I can see where people would disagree, but certain fundamental things, it's just, how can you disagree? How can you say, you know, fentanyl being brought into our country is a good thing, or it shouldn't be regulated, or don't worry about it, forget about it? Too many children and people are dying. No, we can't. Silly, silly. But yeah, I think, I agree. I don't think either side should be in full charge, because then you get huge swings. I think we both should have to agree on things, but it's gotten to the point where they can't even agree on common sense things, like, drugs are bad for America. They're like, no, they're good. No, you should let that terrorist go. Let that gangster go. Or yeah, it's just, I think they're just got that TDS so bad that they just go against it because Trump does it, regardless whether it makes, logic or not. Logic be damned. And I'm not the biggest fan of Trump and the way he speaks sometimes, but and I'm not in favor of everything that he does. There's some things he's done that I've been staunchly against, but I think he's getting results where a lot of others made promises and empty promises that they never kept. And at least he's getting, coming through on a lot of his promises. I can't say that. But I don't want anybody mad. So, some people, but people need to step back and look and realize how much hate that they now have for certain things, and find the source. Well, how did I get such hate? Reagan was president, and he did a lot of radical different things, back in the day, but nobody hated Reagan like they do Trump. And even Biden, all the hate. It's just, I don't know where all this comes from, but I don't like it. Hey, O'Shea's in here. Good to see you, brother. And I'm behind. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit, 13 minutes. I'm getting caught up. O'Shea was on the show last night on the shit show, and I'm glad you joined us, brother. Yeast has a big impact. Yeast is very important selection. Specific yeast are tailored more for specific fermentations. Now, I will say that it all boils down to taste. And if we all had the same taste, then we'd all buy the same bottle off the shelf, right? So we all have different tastes, but a lot of times when it comes to what we preach and teach is numbers, right? So if 80 or 90% feel that this yeast is best for this type fermentation and this yeast is best for this type fermentation, it's not necessarily a fact, because there's always 10, 20% that disagree. But it becomes, most people tend to like this or that or the other. So we need to try to make note of that when we say, this or that most people prefer, or, the trend is this, or this is preferred by most, or something to that effect. Whereas like a daity yeast, is generally geared towards grains, right? And most people don't use daity in their brandies or wines. Some do, and they may make perfectly fine wine. They may love it, but it's not really what it was designed and geared for. A lot of yeast have been selectively bred for specific purposes, even to the point where some of my yeast, like a Premier Rouge, was made for darker fruits like red grapes and plums, and darker fruits like that. Whereas the Premier Blanc was created for, its Red Star, was created for lighter colored fruits like peaches and white grapes and things of that nature. So even to the color, and the pigmentation, and the flavor, and how it contributes to floral notes, or musty notes or dry notes, depending on how um, I will say a pretty good common yeast is like a Lalvin EC1118. You'll see that mentioned a lot. Originally, that's a champagne yeast, but it finishes very dry. It finishes a high alcohol content. It's pretty tolerant to temperature and pH swings. So it's made it pretty popular amongst most people. If you had to buy just one yeast, a lot of people just get that EC1118, use it for everything. Which, if you were to buy one, it'd probably be a pretty good choice. But a lot of people tend to prefer, whiskey specific yeasts, like Firm Solutions has this 927 that I'm getting ready to use out, um, and a 921 and different numbers that are geared towards whiskeys, and I used bread yeast for many years for whiskeys, and that's perfectly fine as well. A lot of people will scoff at it. Oh, it's garbage. I can't believe you would tell anybody that, and the yeast snobs out there. But and it just boils down to taste. You can't tell somebody that what they like. You can't like that. How forbid you to like that, right? But yeah, certain yeasts are geared towards different. Like a D47, for example, is great for meads and things like that. So, and there's like the blue yeast specifically for like tequilas and stuff. That's just fantastic and hands down better than most any other yeast for tequilas. And some might argue, and that's fine, but most people tend to prefer that blue yeast. And just a lot of different yeast for a lot of different applications. And it will have an impact on flavor for sure. That's true, Mikey. That's true, brother. Yeah, it does. It depends on your mash and what you got going. If you're doing fruits and making brandies, I would definitely go with wine yeast. They definitely, and every company makes them. Wines, specific yeast for different wines, and specific wines for like colors of wines, and different meads, specific for the meads, and they tend to work the best, and most people tend to agree, but not all. So there's always that 10 or 20% that's going to say no, that's yeah, and it's nothing says I don't know what I'm talking about more than somebody saying all yeast is the same. It's not. If somebody says that, it's like, okay, you probably, yeah, I'm not going to be mean, but yeah, it's yeast does matter. Yeah, they're smoke in like glasses and stuff, and then they'll pour a whiskey in it, and they've got like ashtrays, and they'll sit and they'll start a little chunk of wood and going on fire, and they'll set it in that ashtray, and then they'll set the cup over top of it and smoke that glass, and then pour a brandy or a liquor in there, and whiskey and bourbon or something in there, and you drink it, and it gets that smoke flavor, and it's enhances it a lot for a lot of people. Yeah, I think generally speaking, if you were just going to buy two yeasts, I'd say EC1118 for all your wines and brandies and fruits would be fine, and then a good Datey, for your grains would be a great place if you just wanted to buy two. If you're just going to buy one, I'd say buy EC1118 because it's better for grains than Datey is for fruits. So EC1118 is good for everything and best for nothing. So that's why it's generally, if you're buying one, get that one because it's good for everything, but it's best at nothing. So there's a lot of specific yeast that'll fit that best category if you want to buy different yeast. I think strictly been Georgia Moon back in the day. That's actually one of the first ones that came out, man. They came out back in the 80s. I drank quite a bit of that when I wasn't making it. Yeah, Angel's Envy's good stuff. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people don't know when Angel's Envy first started opening, they might have put a little NGP in there. Just saying. Yeah, it's good stuff. Angel's Envy. I've got a bottle on my bar for sure. Every bar is not complete unless you got one of those. There's a lot of other ones though that are, equally as good. Some might say, some people, everybody's different though. Jalapeno wine. No, but we're gonna make some salsaritas. A little salsa mixed with a tequila or a neutral. It's good stuff, man. It's like makes Bloody Marys look mundane. It's got a little chunk in it too, little vegetables and stuff from the actual salsa. Good stuff, man. We make some really good salsa. Yeah, it definitely, having the right equipment definitely helps, and knowledge goes a long way too. You can. I've seen people turn out better product on a Bever football steel with a little column set up, or little setup jar rigs coming off of it and stuff, than others can do on a big huge copper rig with it all boils down to the mash, what goes in, garbage out kind of thing. But yeah, then 2 pounds of malted corn, 1 pound of sugar per gallon. Now, if you're doing malted corn and you want to take advantage of the malt, um, a lot of people just do the malted corn and for the flavor of the corn. But if you're going to take advantage of the malt, it's a really long, arduous, slow cooking process. We talked a little bit about that last night, like 10 hours at 150, 55 degrees to gelatinize your corn. It will add a unique flavor, but if you're just starting out, you're really trying to climb the ladder 3 steps at a time, right? So I would back off the expense of a malted corn and just go with a regular cracked corn and get some high temp amylase and some of the liquid glucose and follow some basic steps and omit needing sugar at all. You won't even need sugar. And even if you do, it'll be just a little tiny bit, definitely not enough to make it hot. And O'Sheen, we can have you making some liquor, man. Your friends will be like, "There's no way you made this, man." And it's a lot smoother, better. Trust me, I start out with sugar shines, thin mash, basically. What you're going to do is use corn and sugar water, and use the corn basically for a flavoring instead of taking advantage of the corn's natural sugars and starches, and to convert them into sugars that can be fermented that the yeast can eat. So we can get you making some good shine, but malted corn is expensive, and it's unless you malt it yourself, of course, and then it's still arduous and time's money. Um, but there is a different flavor to the malt, so that'll add some unique flavors, and it'll be good. Uh, but you're probably going to need a little bit more sugar, unless if you're converting the corn and you plan on cooking it for 10 hours at 150, 55, and then using its natural amylases to convert it, and then following up with some liquid glucose at the end, and then maybe topping it off with a little bit of sugar, if that would be okay. Um, in which case a pound may be okay, or a little bit much. But if you're not doing that conversion, then a pound of sugar is not going to be enough per gallon. So you might want to go with 1.5 or 2 pounds, because you want to get your gravity. We'll talk about gravity, right? And that's measures the density of your water, and it measures the sugar content of the water. So and it tells you, there's certain limits you don't want to exceed, because A, your yeast can't handle it, and B, because it just gets too hot to where it's just not good to drink. It's too hot. It's burned, too much burn. and it's not a good quality. It scorches your throat even after you proof it down. It's just not good, smooth liquor, right? So we can get you on the right path to making a good corn liquor with just good old cracked corn, cheap as a dirt, or better yet, buying whole kernel corn, just the corn itself, no other, no nothing, no deer, additives, no apple, no pellets, no other, just plain yellow dent #2 corn in a bag, right? And grind that up fresh. And it'll keep a lot longer when it's in that kernel, a lot longer. And grind it up fresh and use it. It's just like coffee, the difference between buying it pre-ground and ground. It's a lot better flavor and quality, right? But yeah, we'll have you converting the corn. Basically, you can cook it a lot faster. It's 90 minutes to 2 hours instead of 10 hours. And then you use the high temp amylase, let it cool down, and add your liquid glucose, let it cool down, and then add some yeast, and you're ready to go, man. And it's a lot easier than malting corn, cooking it this way and steeping it. So yeah, we can hook you up, brother. We can give you the knowledge that you need to and you found the right place. We can have you making some liquor. Your buddies will be like, there ain't no way you made it. Especially once you start um, aging it and putting some oak on it, some charred oak in there, some barrel staves that are, charred up real good, or some spirals or something in there, chips or something, and start getting that whiskey flavor and that good, you know, color. That's not going to taste like bourbon. It's not going to be a Weller or anything like that, right? We're not going to, promise you fairy dust. But yeah, your buddies will be like, "There's no way you made this, man. It'll be good, and you'll be surprised." But um, yeah, just if you do the malted corn, you're gonna have to cook it at about 150, 55 degrees for about 10 hours, 10 to 12. Whenever it gelatinizes, you'll know it starts getting pretty thick, kind of like oats do, and gets real thick and like a cream corn thick, and or corn pudding. I think a gelatinized corn like a corn pudding does. Um, in which case, if you do it that way, that 1 pound of sugar may be a little bit more than you need. But you need to get you what's called a triple scale hydrometer. They're like $4 or $5 on Amazon, 6 maybe, and that'll pretty much let you know your sugar content. And then after that, you can know how much sugar, if any, that you need to add, right? But yeah, keep coming on here and ask you questions. And have you already bought your steel and everything, I'm guessing? And is this your first run, or how long you been doing it? Need to know, bro. Yeah, I know. I'm going to be using mine for too long. I got me a new little 4-inch column. I ain't gonna believe it. All right. See, Santa's real, buddy. Trust me. Oh yeah, I love me some wine now. Instead of a mellow it's capsamel. Yeah, I like the mellow capsaicin shit. I'm not big on the Scoville chart, man. I'm a pussy Scoville. That's the number of Scovilles I do. It gets 100,000, 200,000. I mean, I'm good with the jalapeno, but all these ghost peppers and all this other shit, I ain't, why? I just don't. Man, my stomach, I'm old. When I was younger, yeah, I'd probably been into that. Seen who could piss the farthest and drink the hot, eat the hottest and all that. We did stupid shit. But nah, man, my stomach the way it is now, hell, it hurts when I eat normal food. Absolutely, man. We're in the DIY and shine and steel building. We're gonna start getting more into homestead and off the grid and survival living and techniques, and I'm gonna try to get more people conversing. We're starting to get a little bit. We're getting a lot of people in there. A lot of people coming from the show, and coming in there to listen, just like they do on the show. We get a lot of listeners and not a lot of participants, but you can use nicknames in there now. So I know that's the generally concerned about 90% of the people that don't comment is they're worried about, people seeing them and knowing who they are. And, we got some aspiring politicians and other people that are interested in the hobby that don't want to be known, and others, and I understand. So you can use nicknames in there now and do other things. So definitely welcome you and encourage participation. Don't spam the group with a lot of unrelated stuff. I'll take it down. We're going to stay on topic in there, but if it has to do with liquor, beer, wine, canning, vegetables, meats, hunting, off the grid living, setting up, solar panels, setting up, cargo houses, whatever, container houses and shacks and anything like that. Yeah, man. It's going to be a pretty broad. I think it'll encourage a little bit more participation if we kind of branch out a little bit more from just moonshine or steel building, but going to try to keep it on topic. Let's not bring in politics and a lot of other that stuff. We'll have to take it out. But hey, 18 and a half gallon beverage is a good steel, bro. I mean, that's most people, there's nothing wrong with an 18 and a half gallon beverage. You can put, I'm going to put a 4-inch column on that and my other steel. So, yeah, you can put it on. I mean, it's bigger than a keg. Most people, a lot of people run on kegs. A lot of people run on 15 and 20 gallon copper steels. And, you'd think they were, kind of browbeating people that use a bever and heat it up on a stove. There's nothing wrong with using a stove as long as it doesn't cycle heat on and off. It's just another heat source, right? So, I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of using a stove versus a propane. That doesn't make it any better. That's just silly. Hell, I've done everything from wood to propane to, on the stove. It all works well. In fact, I mean, when it gets cold, I do inside on the stove, and I can be running. It takes a little bit longer. I mean, I got a 3,200 watt element on the front right of this stove, and then the 1,900, and then a warmer that 18 and a half covers all three elements on that stove. And I can be dripping in an hour and pretty much well through my hearts in 4 hours, and that ain't much different than propane, and it's 18 and a half gallons versus 20. So I don't know why, now if your stove cycles on and off and has thermostat where it kicks on and off to regulate the heat, if it's not hot enough, you don't want that, because it smears your run. You want a constant temperature, right? And being able to run a constant temperature. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with cooking on a stove or cooking with elements or cooking on a propane burner. It's just different methods to do the same thing, and we're all moonshiners. We use what method that we can, and to browbeat people because they're, doing it one way versus another's, silly. If it's stove that cycles on and off, I wouldn't browbeat somebody, but I'd let them know it's going to be a lot harder for you to make your cups with that. But ain't nothing wrong with an 18 and a half gallon beverage at all. That's a good sized pot. It's great for boiling water. It's good for a lot of things. A lot of people ferment in them too. It's a good clean vessel for fermentation. It's better than plastic. A lot of people using plastic drums. So I mean, the stainless is a step up from that. It's not big enough for me, but it's definitely a step up if you don't want to do any more than that. And it's great for boiling water. It's a big ass pot for boiling water. Most people don't have a 15, 18 gallon pot, right? So ain't nothing wrong with 18 half gallon football steel for sure, bro. That's a good little setup. What's going on, Miss Lisa? How you tonight, dear? Happy New Year's. It's our first show since New Year's, so I get to say that. Yeah, I like watching them on Thursday too. A lot of times I'll listen to them while I'm playing my game. I'll play a game and I'll have them in the background listening. Pawpaw trees. That's good. But if you're going to do that, I recommend anybody young out there, man, I so wish I'd done this when I was younger. Plant lots of peach trees, plant lots of apple trees, plant lots of blackberry bushes. You can start them yourself, cut them, and propagate them, clone them. It's easy to do. You can learn to tree graft. It's not rocket science. Man, I'm telling you, plant grapes, plant all kinds of shit. It's cheap and easy. And if you find, some groups will share. So if you've got a lot of peaches and you want to share peach cuttings with a group that's got blackberry cuttings and others got apple trees, plant them on. If you got land that you can do that, or a fence row you can plant them on, plant your blackberries, your raspberries, your blueberries. My grandpa did, and he oh man, he loved it. He had such a big garden every year and all the fruit, and he had all the netting to keep the birds out and everything. And I tell you, I envy that, and I wished I had the room for it here. So if you got the land, you got the room. I got land, but it's like 2.5, 3 hours away from here. It's gonna be kind of hard to go there every day and kind of work on it, right? But if you live on acreage, your family's got it, man, definitely plant your shit out of trees, plant every fruit, fig you can, and it'll pay off in spades later. And if nothing else, it'll bring in game and help the hunting. It'll help increase the population of game and birds. It's yeah, plant the shit out of it. And that's one thing I don't understand is, you want to feed the starving people in America, then why not start planting fruit trees in the parks instead of, and nut trees, let them go in there and pick all they want, you know. They got a lot of national forests. Why don't we go in there and plant a lot more fruit trees than what we have? Make people, if you want to, the chain gang, instead of making them clean up, on the side of the road, make them plant trees in the forest and stuff, in the chain gang. Let them walk along and plant. That's awesome. But I will. Now, Ocean, you'll see once you start getting into this hobby more and more, brother. You'll be going from 8 gallon to 15 to 20. It's when you get about 20 to 30, that's when you pretty much, that's about the most, say, the limit of hobby versus small craft. I'd argue it's probably a little bit bigger than that, but 30 is about where they say, is kind of getting to the edge of where it might not be. I know Distiller Oregon, a lot of that that I used to listen to and comment in years and years ago, and the news groups from back in the 90s and 2000s. Um, we all talked, and that's about 30. It's, once you get above 30, 35, 40, it's getting a little bit more commercial oriented, or small batch, or artesian or craft distilling. But I will say the smaller stills, Ocean, are going to be tougher to make cuts on, and the work that you do, you're not going to get as much return. So if you're doing a 10-gallon mash versus a 20-gallon mash, really it doesn't take that much more time to do a 20 versus a 10. We're talking, maybe 20 or 30 minutes more. And that's in grinding up the grain and mixing and adding. So it's really not that much more time, and you'll get double the return, right? So instead of the quarter, half a gallon, or 8 gallon still, you might be getting maybe 3/4 to a gallon. You'll get double that. You'll get a couple, 2.5, 3 gallons sometimes, especially if you run your tails again. So, um, and if you're happy with what you're making, and then more power to you, bro. It's but if you do cook it on the stovetop, not a burner, make sure that it's on the propane. Make sure that your stove doesn't cut on and off, on and off, on and off to maintain. Make sure it's not thermostatically controlled like that. A lot of stoves, they just turn out the heat. No matter what setting it's on, that's just what heat will turn out. That's what you want. My older one's like that, and I love it for that. 15-gallon kegs or 15-gallon bever football. Absolutely. It's, and kegs, pretty cheap, 35, 45 bucks on Marketplace. Um, or just go buy beer, and I don't know what the deposit is on them now. Maybe $50 deposit. I don't know. What do they charge? Anybody bought a keg of beer lately? It's been ages since I bought them. I'm not a big beer drinker, but yeah, kegs make excellent steels. They're very sturdy, but you can't put them on a stovetop. Now you're gonna have to use a propane or element. And basically, JJ, column, you don't have to go up to a big, huge 4-inch. You can get these cheap columns now that, let me show you one. It's probably sitting on a keg on this image, but let me see what we got here. This right here. These right here sit right on that bamber. You've got, you got about a 2-foot tube here coming up from the bottom up. You got about a 2-foot tube. Then you got a sight glass sitting on that. In that sight glass is where I generally put my copper mesh. And then above that, you got a deflator or a deflegmator that is a condenser basically that condenses back and it causes reflux, very similar to a multi-plate, reflux type setup, and it'll reflux it back to that copper mesh, right? You have loaded in that sight glass right below it, so you can make it dance on that copper mesh, just like you would on a copper plate in a big, column with multi plates, and get a pretty good product, and then you've got, these are about 125 to 55, 60 bucks, and really tough to beat. The only problem I ever had with the ones I bought a couple, because the parts, when you buy these as a combination for 125 to 50 bucks, if you added up all these parts and bought them separately, it'd probably be close to 2.25, right? So it's a good value. And I bought a couple just so I could buy extra elbows and have a couple of pre-condensed deflagmators and a couple of sight glasses and a couple of shotgun condensers and stuff. Because it was such a good value, and I do a lot of crazy crazy plumbing and stuff with mine, a little creative with valves and stuff and bypasses and diversions and stuff and teas and all kinds of stuff, crazy stuff. I like experimenting, but and this does a great job. You can get 108 out of mine, just like this right here, with water cold enough going through that deflator. I can get up to 187, and that's without trying to make it cold. That's with tap water cold, right? So if I put ice in it and made it even colder, I'm sure I could probably get the 190s, no problem. So you can control your proof by the temperature of the water that goes in that deflator, and it refluxes all the water back, so it just lets those alcohol vapors through. But it's not a huge investment. Now the 4-inch that I bought, it was 250, 275, and probably a bit more expensive. It was more expensive a couple of these, but that's another step up, and one piece at a time, brother. But yeah, when it comes to this, I wouldn't try to buy one piece at a time. Buying this whole setup here, pretty good value. And right now, you may be able to find them on sale. You see them a lot on YouTube. Phil Billy's got them. A lot of people got these. But yeah, they put them on sale from time to time. What's going on, Jason? Good to see you, brother. Another one from the show last night. Good to see y'all coming over. What's going on, brother Monte? How you doing, my brother? Doing good, my friend. How about yourself? Love and life. Happy New Year, man. All right, man. That's cool. Yeah, a lot of people do. I do the same thing. I listen to Lisa's and them in the background while I'm doing things, and I listen to a lot of different podcasts and stuff while I'm doing other things. A lot of people, that's why most people that listen to us, they'll do it on the way to work or on their lunch hour or at their leisure during, it's Saturday night, man. They got better things to do than listen to old Sam and Clint. They out there chasing girls and guys and whoever. But no, we like talking about things. You know, we'll touch a little bit on a lot of things, but I do try to stay away from controversial stuff. You know, religion and politics are two things that you don't want to talk about a lot. You know, it polarizes people, unfortunately, and I want to appeal to everybody. You know, I don't want anybody, you know, to think that, you know, that we think ill of them because you know, they have a little bit different belief than we do. I think fundamentally we all believe the same things. Hopefully we do. Yeah, they kind of scare somebody too, JJ. I look on the damn, and it's a college town. You think you'd find them everywhere. But every time I get on Marketplace, they're either in fucking Tennessee or Ohio. Man, you search for them, you know, by area code, and they try to show you the ones that are closest to you. It's always Ohio or Tennessee, you know, and it's like, damn, I don't want to drive all the way. But yeah, the 18.5 gallon beverage, couple hundred, 230, 250 range, 225, 235 range is about average. You can find different sellers, you know. Um, this time of year, I guess a couple of weeks ago during Black Friday, probably a little cheaper. But and you can run those footballs just the way they are. They're fine just the way they are for whiskey and brandy. You know, 140 proof all day and make good stuff. Uh, and fine. But yeah, you can add some stuff to it and columns and start getting a little fancy. Yeah, I like Firm Solutions too, brother. They make good yeast. That's what this is. This is 927 I was holding up earlier. That's Firm Solutions. They're out of Danville, Kentucky here, man. They got good stuff. And they, you know, it's kind of strange. A lot of people think that they're just a small town, small outfit because they'll deal with anybody, and that's what I love about them. You know, they don't care who you are, how big or small you are, but they sell to some of the biggest distilleries in the world, right? And they're their go to for the biggest distilleries and some of the biggest distilleries in the world. The guy that runs it, Patrick Heist, is a top 10 bourbon maker in the world with his Wilderness Trail distillery. So yeah, so these guys, I mean, they're selling yeast to wineries, beer making. They've got a laboratory where they do, you know, genetic sequencing and research on, you know, if you've got a bacteria or you've got issues, they're the ones that come in and do the swabs and tell you what your problem is, right? They're pretty big outfit and worldwide. But yeah, they'll sell to us lowly shiners, won't they? But they make good yeast and they got good amylase too. Big bottles, a little bit bigger bottles than most of us would need, but pretty good prices. But I don't think that really their prices ain't better than Fieldbillies, and the quality ain't any better than Fieldbillies. So if you're gonna get it, call Field. Yeah, don't work too hard, Mike. Maybe he's in Spernanza, you know, playing that little arc raiders, or maybe he's in Verdansk playing a little Call of Duty on the side, or maybe he's got a little mash going too. It's hard to say. Never know what we got going. They've got it all, brother. They've got it. That they may not have it on their site, but they've got like tens of thousands of yeast, and they're like the seed bank of yeast. Man, they got it all. They talked and see if we can get Patrick Heist on here sometime. Man, brilliant guy, and very humble guy. I mean, I think he was on Still Talking once, or maybe with Alan Bishop or somebody he was on, and so he's probably the most knowledgeable person on this planet when it comes to the science of distillation, and he's definitely top 10 if he ain't in the top five. That's for sure. Um, Maybe definitely in my mind, I don't know anybody that knows anymore. I mean, he knows it country boy down to the heart, you know, here in Kentucky, smart as can be, man. Kind of like me, you know, hick with a brain, right? Yeah, he's brilliant, brilliant guy, man, and he knows it. He knows his shit. He's got a great company. He's one of the 10 top producers of bourbon in the world with his Wilderness Distillery, the Wilderness Trail Distillery. So that's and with his Firm Solutions, yeah, he's got it going on, and he's a great guy. You know, but that 4 inch, with when you get the 4 inch column, um, you're able to upgrade that. I mean, you can use that on a 40, 50 gallon. You know, it's kind of like you get that 5/8 worm. It's 10, 15 foot long and 20 foot long or something crazy big. Yeah, you're good for, you know, a big step up. So it's one piece at a time, right? As Alan says, one piece at a time. Distilling Institute. I guess, you know, when you like us, sometimes you got to buy it a piece at a time, right? You can't afford to just go in there. And, some people can, I guess, afford to go in there and buy a big 50-gallon copper steel and all the bells and whistles and stuff. But hell, it's not me. No, it's actually good to see you. Beautiful projects. Nice to have you with us. It's not hard at all, and you'd actually be surprised how easy it is. Especially like making your own wines is a good place to start. Is in fermentation and learning the fermentation process is wine making and beer making. That's basically what you're doing before you actually distill it. You know, wine is becomes brandy once it's distilled, and beer becomes whiskey and bourbon once it's distilled. And other grains, you know, you can, you know, make, you know, like vodkas from wheat and other grains. So, no, it's actually very easy. Mastering it becomes more difficult, and making it better and the best is a challenge. Uh, but making a good palatable drink that would surprise your friends and shock your friends, or wine that would surprise everybody, is relatively easy. But there are some steps that you have to follow, and you know, especially in winemaking, you know, sanitary and keeping bacteria out at a minimum is, of course, is a necessity and a must, pun intended, must. And you'll get that once you. We call like grain bill is a mash. When you put fruit in ferment fruit, it's called a must. And if it's just sugar and water, or like tequila, you know, agave, or rum, we're using molasses, it washes. But yeah, it's much easier than people realize. It is a little bit of work, but as far as technical skill, it's, you know, anybody can do it if you can just follow simple instructions, and if you can follow a recipe. You can follow the instructions I can give you and make good stuff. And we talk about how, you know, making it safe. That's the biggest issue, is making it safe, and taking the right precautions, and making it a good, safe hobby. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of reward if you enjoy drinking and sharing with your friends. It's you'll shock them. You know, it'll be like, wow, you made this wine, fantastic. I remember my family the first time I started making wine, and taking it to the Christmas dinners and stuff. And you know, most everybody in my family like drinking wine, and they're like, "Oh my God, Joey's brought us some wine." No, no, and they're like, "All right, we'll try it." They're holding their nose before they, you know, take a drink. And after they took it, they're, "Wow, this is actually pretty good." They weren't expecting it to be good at all, right? And they're like, "Wow, this is better than I thought it was going to be." My dad's like, "Damn, pour me another glass." And they were digging the cherry wine and the grape wines that I was making, and the white wines, the sweet white wines that I was making. So yeah, it's not hard. You know, it's actually, if you can put together a lasagna and cook it properly, and you can probably cook these grains just the same, and boil them up, and condense them into, and making your cuts is the most difficult thing probably. And that's something that will take time, and you'll get used to. But there's certain steps that you can do, so many milliliters per gallon, just to get your feet wet and be roughly there. Um, yeah, it's not hard at all. Stick with us, ask your questions. Join DIY Shine and Steel Building on Facebook, DIY Shine and Steel Building, and we can help you on there. Answer any question you've got. We got a lot of files that can show you. We can give you recommendations on easy, simple steels like the football steels we talk about. We've been talking about keg steels and football steels. This is a Bever football steel. The little cap on it there is shaped kind of like a football, and that's how it got its nickname. 230, 250 bucks from Bever. This is 18 half gallon, and that's a pretty decent amount, for the hobbyist. And you can run about 15, 16 gallons in it. It'd be about 4/5 of the way up the side, right? And make about 2.5 gallons of good, liquor, and it's quite rewarding. It's a lot of fun, and you can make really, really good, interesting drinks out of it. Or if you want to put a little column on there, like we've been talking, you can take that football off. It's got what's called a tri clamp on there, and you can clamp on a column or that we were showing here. This column fit right up on top of there. Take that football off, and you can run this column and use this deflamator or deflagmator and make some vodka, and really high proof stuff that you can, proof down with water and make some vodka. I mean, I make vodka that make you scoff at Tito's and some of them top shelf vodkas, man. You'd be like, holy shit, I'll never drink that stuff again. This easy, and it's amazing how easy it is. So yeah, with just a little instruction, a little time, and following a recipe and shit, yeah, you can be making some really good stuff. Your friends will be impressed. They'll want to know how. You'll have to bring them in, and they'll want to learn, especially the wine making too. A lot of everybody loves wine, and most everybody, and it's a lot easier. We talk about using just Welch's grape juice. You can make a decent wine with just Welch's grape juice. Believe it or not. A lot of wine connoisseurs would scoff, and of course, these $1,000 bottle of wine drinkers, of course they would. It's just like people that drink, $1,000 bottles of bourbon would scoff at our little attempt at a bourbon, but you know, we're making it at home and we're having fun with a hobby. We're not, browbeating somebody. Yeah, Quebec yeasts are great. Quebec, they're really good. Um, you can put that on there, and I kid around when I talk about this. You can get like a pressure cooker thing and buy a steel and tell your wife you got her a big pressure cooker, and then when she's not there, you can just take the little 5 pounds. It was 5, 10, and 15. I think PSI spinners off and start making you shine. But I really, it's not necessary if you follow the precautions. I would hate to trust something like that and have it fail. Now, a lot of times stuff is, bought from China, and I'd hate to, risk something with such a low cost part. These people get, two, three, $4,000 big copper steels, and they trust a vacuum, you know, a $5 vacuum, piece on there to keep it from, imploding. No, just put a half-inch valve on there and don't forget to open it, right? Um, yeah, I mean, it's a good safety feature to have for sure. I'm not going to say it's bad, but safe practices, is definitely something that you want to follow strictly and avoid any kind of situation where you might need one. But if that thing ever went off, you'd be damn glad you had it, right? So yeah, especially if you're running thumpers and trying to experiment with multiple jar rigs and you're using bypasses and you're sitting there drinking and you got all these valves and stuff and you didn't realize it, but you had them all shut off and you weren't bypassing anything. It's pressure building. So, if you run steels like I do, that's got multiple valves and run a lot of bypasses, which I came up with, and then yeah, you're definitely going to need something like that if you're going to sip while you do it, because it's, you don't want to forget that, hey, I got all these valves turned off, man. What the hell? It's easy to do if you're drinking while and that's another discipline, trying to minimize how much you drink while you're distilling and being safe. And having a fire extinguisher always close by that's rated for alcohol is also a good idea. Yeah, so feel about Mark Food will feel about that. Yeah, vacuum release and pressure relief valves. Yeah, they're definitely good to have on there, because once that thing goes off, you're damn glad you did. But safe practices too. Try to be safe. Don't just say, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. If anything happens, this will go off. You need to do certain things, like don't put chunky stuff in the thumper. If your water level's rising and you got big grapes floating around in there, one of them could go up into the line and get caught, and start building pressure, and you don't even know it. Next thing you know, you got steam blowing out everywhere, flames, shooting like flame throwing. Yeah, it's just be careful and puree most everything you put in that thumper, right? I always talk about macerating or pureeing it or blending it or doing something. Don't put chunks in there. Even the cream corn, when I talk about using an immersion blender, put it in a blender, chop it all up, especially if you got the beverage with the little teeny lines. Now we talk about putting copper in your lines. That's not if you have small copper lines. We're talking when you have something like this, right? When you've got an inch and a half, 2 inch uh, diameter pipe versus a 3/8 inch like that. Yeah, you can put some loose fitting copper into something like this, but don't even think about putting it in those little copper lines that you get on some of those 3-pots, right? So I try to make sure I say that every time I do talk about putting copper in lines, because there is going to be that person that's going to do it, and it's going to get backed up and cause a clog and pressure and problems, and it's all of a sudden, dang. Yeah, she still made it, brother. We still got a little bit of time. We're about 10:30. We're about 2.5 hours in. We got a little bit longer to go. If you got any questions for your day, but yeah, you can be like most people, catch it later or pick up and watch the first half earlier. Yeah, enzymes a lot cheaper than malt. A lot. Well, if your time is money, it is. You can malt it yourself for nothing for free, but your time's money. So once you figure that in, yeah, they're laborious and expensive, especially if you're buying it from a malt house or somebody malt it for you. Absolutely, it's cheaper. I mean, if it wasn't, they'd be making all this ethanol fuel out of sugar instead of corn. But me and Mikey Frayne, we figured it out one day, and it's so much cheaper to get sugar from corn. We calculated it out. We did all the math and experimented, and it's less than half, the cost. I think 70 cents is what a pound of sugar is, and I think we figured this was like 30 something cents equivalents. So it's a lot cheaper, and that's at the prices we pay. The big distilleries, um, they're getting that corn much cheaper. Raisin bran's great. Raisins add a flavor. A lot of people talk about using tomato paste and raisins as a nutrient. No, they're not a good nutrient. They do supplemental. They add some supplemental nutrients that are beneficial. But the raisin, but the bran flakes themselves, that's a great nutrient, because it's got the an and fan and everything in there that you need. In fact, crumple up ample, will proportionally raisin bran flakes, or just bran flakes in general, wheat bran. Yeah, it's a great nutrient for your yeast. The fermo, that's basically a yeast husk, dead yeast, and that's a good nutrient as well. But yeah, the raisin bran is raisins add a softness and a good flavor, and the bran and a little bit of probably some biotins and a few amino acids and stuff that would help. But It just doesn't have the N and FAN, the yeast assimilable nitrogen and the free amino nitrogen that your yeast need. Whereas the bran flakes will have that, the Fermo will have that. A lot of the Fermax, a lot of people don't like using Fermax and with urea, and you don't have to. There's other things if you're worried about that you can use that are great and that you get out of the pantry. But um, try to shy away from tomato paste. It's okay for like a sugar wash, but it's best if you throw some bran flakes in with it, or some dead yeast hulls, or you can boil up some bread yeast and kill it and dump it in there. That's good nutrients as well. It's the same thing, dead yeast, but all that works pretty well. Yeah, and it'll probably give it some little bit of flavor, but it definitely feeds your yeast good. And even if you like having all corn, it wouldn't hurt to throw a little bit of handful in there to feed it, because there is yan and fan in the corn itself, but it could use a little bit more. And they're finding also now that it's better, instead of adding all your nutrients at once, especially like with a wine, to not add any right off the bat, but step feed it, every day, step feed it, and feed it a certain percentage every day instead of all at once up front. Um, and there's a lot of people that are, doing a lot of chemistry and gas chromatography and things like that to determine exactly how much nutrients are needed for specific fermentations, and that's getting heavy science. But and it's essential. You don't want to overfeed, because overfeeding, depending on the food that you're using, if you're using diammonium phosphate and some of those things, overfeeding can be a big problem. Been some posts about that recently, and that's certainly true. It can give you some off flavors if you overuse it. Whereas, if you overuse dead yeast hulls, it might give it a yeasty flavor, but it's not going to, give it a, chemically taste or off flavor. And it's not going to stress your yeast, like it would if with an oversupply of DAP or a lot of other nutrients. So it's best to step feed, and definitely don't overfeed, because they're finding that can be just as detrimental as not feeding at all. So it's just stress, yeah, yeast stress. Awesome, that works, brother. I mean, if it's working, I ain't gonna knock it. So your cooking process, if you try to cook it for a long period of time at a lower temperature, you'll get what the benefit out of your malted corn. Now, what happens when you malt the corn? You release an enzyme inside that corn that's naturally in there, and it will break those starches in the sugar down, or in the corn down, to simpler sugars, for to give the energy to the plant that it needs to send down that root, that radicle. They call it a radicle. That root, that initial little root that it shoots out, that's called a radical. And it once you see that little radical come out, you want to stop the malting process immediately. And maybe just a little 1/8 inch, 16th inch, just as soon as that thing comes out, because if the further it comes out, the more of the natural amylase and starches are being consumed to give it the energy to come out, right? So that's what gives this kernel energy while it's in the ground, before it gets the energy from the sun and photosynthesis. So you want to stop that process so you can maximize the amount of enzymes and sugars that you're going to get out of that kernel, right? So, but if you cook that corn, crack it and cook it at a low temperature for a longer period of time, it's fine, but you'll get the benefit of those natural amylases. Not essential, you can get the flavor without it, but you can get by with less sugar and less bite. And I'm not knocking you, bro. I did the same thing. I use sugar and cornmeal that I didn't convert for 20, 30 years, bro. I mean, it's good. It's fine. But we can make it better. Believe it or not, we can make it better. So once you go all grain and start converting, and even use the malt. But what we recommend doing, instead of malting, going to the difficulty of malting your corn and making the arduous long cooking times, you can just use a regular cracked corn, right? and then use a malted barley or a malted wheat that has a high diastatic power that will do that conversion for you. So it would be a lot easier if you malt a wheat and or a barley. You can buy it pre-malted, but wheat you can buy it cheap as shit if you find a farmer that farms it, red winter wheat or soft white. Um, yeah, you can find a farmer that farms it, get it from them, malt it just like you do your corn, very similar to what you do your corn, and get the diastatic enzymes out of that, and use that to convert your corn with, and man, you won't believe how much flavor and how much easier, and you won't need sugar at all. You know, you can eliminate the use of sugar, and it'll make it a lot smoother. And I'm telling you, man, you'll think, wow, this is great, right? I mean, I've been through it. I made, that same, very similar to what you're doing for 20, 30 years, man. And after I learned about the conversion process, it's like, wow. And then I started trying it, and it's like, holy shit. I thought that was good, man. This is, and it start, then you start thinking, well, this is better than you buy in the store kind of stuff, and once you master that, it's like, and then you start aging it. It's like, man, this is some medium shelf stuff I'm making, right? That's what we can get you there, bro. Resin brand. That's funny. I like it, resin brand. That sounds pretty good. Don't it? Put that in your pipe there. Little resin brand. That's right. That's a fact. Yeah, I made that thin mash for long, many, many years. Now with my stove, now if you use your stove, mine doesn't. I don't know if it's gas stove, it's perfect because you can just heat. But electric stoves, some of them will kick on and off, on and off, on and off. That if it does that, you don't. It's harder to make your cuts and it's hard to do. But mine, when I get up to like 8, it just stays on and it goes to 9. So medium high to high, which is where I go for my, I don't ever go below that. I'll go to 9, and then when it starts dripping, I'll cut it back to 8. But it gives a solid heat. It doesn't go on and off. That light, that the coil underneath there stays red the whole time, so it doesn't ever fade on and off or cycle at all. And that's kind of the difference between an SCR and a PID if we're using elements, right? So um, yeah, but I mean, even if your stove does cycle, it just makes cuts harder and it does smear a bit, and you might sacrifice a little bit in quality, but at the end of the day, if you like say, if you like it, you like it. It don't matter. You know. Yeah, man. So do we, bro. I love going in that rabbit hole. That's what I've got to know. When I was a kid, I took everything apart. I had to know everything that made it tick. Electronics or mechanical and anything. And I'd tear up so many telephones and stereos. My dad started bringing stuff home that was broken, so I could just fool with that instead of breaking the shit that we got already. Right? I mean, hair dryers, it didn't matter. I'd take it all apart and just see what made it work and how it worked, and always interested in science, and so it's easy to pique my interest and get me obsessed. I get obsessed about things pretty quickly and easily, and I have to know. I got that. I just got to know what everything makes it work and makes it tick, and once you start going down that rabbit hole, man, it's there's so much. I mean, that science gets so complicated. I don't even understand it at a certain point. I understand the processes and fundamentals, but I mean, it can get so overwhelming with the technicality that it's just, well, I think once it gets to that point, it's just to the point of explaining it in ways that you don't understand it, because the same principles apply. So yeah, I like it on YouTube. It is pretty good. And I will say that we had quite a few more people from Fillbillies that normally comment that aren't here tonight, because I'm seeing a lot more red than blue. So it's definitely impacted our numbers, having that page down. So we definitely got to try to get that back up for sure. And it's not about the numbers. I just want to make sure those people get the message. Hopefully they'll find us if we can't get Phil back up, and hopefully we can. Hopefully, I'm sure it's probably just a temp ban. They can't. It, I don't know. They're going to have to prove that it was something major, or I'm hoping he get a lawyer. We may have to start a GoFundMe, get that shit taken care of. Yeah, that's everybody should. Am I that far behind? Lord have mercy. God love us. I'm 45 minutes behind. I'm gonna skip some stuff. Plums, yeah. I can't believe I'm that far behind. And yeah, OCD. I was just talking about my OCD and obsessive compulsive. Yeah, that rabbit hole, man, it gets deep. Hey, just be glad you ain't older. You're still young enough you can do something. Plant them trees. You're still young. That's what we're here for, brother. That's why we got these pages up. We're trying to pass the knowledge, not just about making moonshine and beer and wine, but also canning your fruits and vegetables and growing and off the grid living, and survival. Lord help us if the shit hit the fan and the grid went down. This world would be turned upside down, if the grid went down. Can you imagine? Most people can't live without their telephone. Imagine what they're going to do without their stoves or refrigerators. They'll be going crazy, robbing people, and yeah, it's going to get ugly if that were to happen, man. EMP or something just shut down the grid for a few months, and we'd be in shambles, man. Only the country people would be able to survive, Those that know, they'd be coming to us, and they'd be trying to take what we got, or they'd be appreciated for what we offer, and they'd be working for us, right? So all them blue collars, all of a sudden we'd be running the show. Those white collars be we'll be bossing them around, right? Welcome back, Mark. You missed me getting 30 minutes behind. God almighty. Shots, yeah, that's about 20 to 30 minutes late. I damn sure need it. I can't believe I got that late. Sitting there. I get to drinking and talking, man. I go all night, believe it or not. You're right. Let's see. You said that at 10:14. Damn, it's exactly 20 minutes. You said at 10:14. It's 10:44. No, that's 30 minutes. Up, you were off. 30. Yep. 30 minutes. I'm scrolling by. I hope I don't miss the questions. Firm Solutions is a company here in Danville, Kentucky. They do a lot of stuff. Yeah, there's get up and feel Billy if you need a lot of stuff. But Firm Solutions has good yeast and good amylase. But Phil Billy's got the amylase. He can get you the amylase. Yeast you can get on Amazon, pretty cheap, and they'll ship pretty much anywhere. Yeah, I'm not going to drive 2 hours to a brew shop to get $20 worth of yeast and spend $20 worth of gas. And I do a lot of Amazon and Phil Billy and everybody else, That'll work. Yeah, Those were the days, bro. Now you can fill your truck up. Just drive them to a farm. If you got a farmer, man, you can get them cheap. Right. Yeah, it's not. You know, the copper heats more evenly. It does take, if you do a lot of brandies, you know, your copper is going to be a little bit more beneficial because the brandies tend to create a little bit more sulfites, you know, for me anyway, than my grain distillations. Um, but really, it's aesthetics and flavor a little bit in the brandies, but even heating, you know, helps, and time, and a little better even heating. So it might make a little better product, but it's not markedly better. And if you're using the copper mesh, it's very negligible now. And is it worth the added maintenance and trouble? That's the big if now, you know, that we got the mesh to help take out the sulfites. So it's losing its benefits. Yeah, Milo's fine. I used to make a little bird seed bourbon, mix a lot of those different seed grains up, makes it pretty interesting. Yeah, you gotta use what you can get, what you can get cheap. You know, that's one thing you're talking about wines and brandies is fruit's expensive. It's like heirloom grains. It's pretty expensive. So when you start making wines and brandies and stuff, probably cheapest to start with like an apple wine with an apple juice and Welch's juice to make a wine with, and kind of start from there and work your way up and start adding fruit to it. And before you know it, you'll be doing, you know, pretty much 3/4 fruit and then adding juice just to help, you know, make it go a little further. But you got to get your fruit on sale or find somebody that's got trees to let you come pick apples or peaches from, and that helps a lot because fruit's expensive. What's going on, Wayne? Good to see you, brother. Hey, we got, oh hell, representing tonight. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. Can you? I ain't showing my titty or that thing. Ozark still work. Did you get my? I tagged you in a post on in the DIY shine and stuff and steel building page. They were talking about welding in there, and hopefully you can comment on that and share your expertise. Good to see you, brother. Happy New Year. For those that you don't know, that's Wayne Herbert from Ozark Steelworks, Master Crafter, one of the best fab men out there, bro. That's no doubt. He's one of the best fabricators we got in the business for sure. Great guy too. And we're just 20 minutes. Hopefully Wayne's still here. I'm sorry. Yeah, the inch and a half isn't bad, even inch, but when you start getting like the small 3/8 inch stuff on some of those, you know, you get some of those beverage pots that are 10 gallons. They got like 3/8 inch lines. That's no, nah, you need to get that shit off there and put some bigger pipes on there. I'm scrolling past. I'm trying to at the end. Well, you want to try to do it as a vapor before it gets condensed, JJ. It works a lot better than once it gets condensed, running it through the copper mesh. Certainly helps. But if you can get it as that vapor, you know, they make little screens that you can put that like, you know, gaskets that we have to put in between all these pieces, right? The tri-clint pieces. They make some gaskets with screens in them, and they've got some that are pretty heavy, you know, thick. This, you know, large screens. We have this large aperture, so it's not like a real fine mesh. It's large screens, and it'll hold your copper mesh in place where it won't fall through if that's a concern. And I use that on mine. Yeah, it's a heavy screen. It's built right into the gasket, sit it right there underneath the sight glass, and put that copper in the sight glass, and it won't allow it to go down any further. Right, Mark. If you use a thumper and jaw rigs, your system is no longer open. It's a closed system, and vacuum backups can definitely create an issue, and you need a pressure relief and a vacuum brake. Best just to put a valve in there or pop the top off. But I say if every one of them just had a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch valve, ball valve, right on top, and as soon as you're done running, as soon as you turn the heat off, and boom, open that up. Doesn't matter if a little bit of steam comes out. If your heat's off, don't worry about it. Uh, but that'll prevent from implosion. I've seen a lot of $2,000 or $3,000 copper steels go, and it's not pretty watching them having to try to blow it out with air pressure and beat it out and hammer it out. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When you add your oats, you're adding them just like any other adjunct grain. Let me put this up here for you. So you can see oats right underneath the rye here. Goes in right at the time about 145, 50 degrees. So you can add that at the same time you're doing your other stuff. We're really not using oats for their diastatic power or anything like that. It's just they do bring in some sugars, some natural starches and sugars that get converted and get broken down, but really they add a softness and a mouthfeel and a flavor. And that's a lot of times when people use oats, that's what they're using them for. It's not a primary grain. It's more of a secondary adjunct, if you will, or a third, uh, less less than primary. Secondary is kind of even less than that for most people. It's not a primary or secondary grain that they add. It's just something they kick in uh, for the softness and for the mouthfeel and the creaminess that it provides. They definitely bring some starch, and that gets converted um, fairly well with your glucose stuff, and with the Visco Seb, if you want to, or Sebamil, and all those that you use will help break it down. Or if you're using the yellow label, of course, it would just break everything down in it. But um, yeah, you don't really necessarily have to break it all the way down and convert it. Most of all your sugars are coming from the other grains, right? And the amylase if you're using malted grains and stuff. So really, it's used more as a mouthfeel. But I mean, if you do want to um, break it down, of course, definitely you can. There's malted oats, just like anything else that you can use. Or if the amylase that's in there, though, that I temp, it's still somewhat effective even at the lower temperatures, much, much less effective. But if you're using like a malted barley and you're adding it at the 150, 145, 155 range in the certification here, right above it, you'll see barley malt just above wheat, rye, and oats. So you'll see the lowest temperature of barley malt is the highest end of your oats. So after you add your barley malt and it's done its thing, you can throw those oats in as it cools down, and there's going to be alpha and beta glucanase that come from that's going to convert everything in those oats. So yeah, they're going to get converted, especially with the gluco. Amylase will help break it down a lot. There still may be some very few limit dextrins, but you're going to get the benefit of those oats and the softness from them. So I like using oats. I know it's tough, brother. It gets tough, and it don't get any better as you get older, man. It's just you get to the point where you don't care anymore. You admit it. You know, it's obvious. My big thing is I used to be very, I don't know, I never dropped shit or got fumbly, and you know, I never was loose handed and just willy nilly. You know, I never stumbled and dropped a lot of things, and man, as you get older, it's like, God damn it, I can't hold on to a thing anymore. I drop everything now. It's crazy. So yeah, it sucks. I I agree here, but it's propane cook stove. That's awesome, bro. That's perfect. Just be careful in the house. That's that's the main thing. When you're inside, you in your home. And there's been some instances, especially with these beverage stills. I will say, on the side of these, you see these little latches on the side. Now, the wire that goes into that latch on each side just goes straight into those, right? And it's easy for that to get bent out and for one of those to come out of the latch, and you don't you think it's latched down good. It's not, because one side of that's out. Just ask Phil, Marfugal Phil. Uh, it came out on him, and he went out to have a smoke while he was running a little bit. Came back in, and his whole garage bar was on fire, man. He fortunately had a fire extinguisher, and he's able to pull it out. But his whole ceiling, man, he said the whole ceiling was on fire, and people say, oh no, those stills won't blow up and catch fire like that. That's just old wise tale. No, don't listen to anybody that says that. Block them. There's nothing wise is going to come out of an idiot that says something like that. Just block them. You don't need to listen to another thing they say. I hate to be that way, but if they're stupid enough and irresponsible enough to tell somebody that, then you don't need to hear anything else they have to say. That's a fact. So it is a fact that they can and do. Plenty of people died knowing that. Real man use copper. Yeah, that's funny, Scott. Yeah, we'll post on Phil Billy's page, and hopefully we'll get Phil Billy back online. Hopefully that's just a tent ban, and but we may have to start a little GoFundMe page, and get him an attorney up, and get his shit reinstituted. If it's a lot of times it's just a tent ban for a week or two or something like that. Um, but we'll just have to see. I'm just sick that it might have been something from my show, but I don't think it was, because if it was, they would have taken down Distilling 101 and the militia as well, because it went across all of them, and they know that they see what it was linked to. So if it was done on, it was just somebody had it out for either me or Phil, and trying to hurt us one way or the other. That's the bad thing. And then you got to think about who would have anything to gain from taking me and Phil down. You know, yeah, that sucks. And being paranoid like that and thinking that way sucks. Saturdays, he's lurking. That's right. Good to see you, Scurb. Good to see you on the shit show last night too, brother. We're gonna have those once or so a month. They're a lot of fun, especially if it's like the old days. That's just getting on there and ribbing each other, shooting the shit, and talking about whatever. that's the night we can talk about politics and unpopular things to talk about. And if you don't like it, just scroll on by. Don't hate me for what I say, because everybody's got their opinions. And if you don't like mine, just say, well, he's wrong about that. I enjoy listening to him talk about that shine, and I can learn from him there. But he's wrong about that. And then, when opinions are that way, it's not right who's wrong. There's no right and wrong. It's just an opinion, right? It's no fact to it. It's all opinion. So, I respect other people's opinions and ways of life. I don't care. Everybody's anti this or that. I don't care. I don't care what color somebody is. I don't care what their sexuality is. I don't understand why they need to promote that. Who cares what you do, man? I don't care what color you're born or who you sleep with or how you sleep or whatever. I really don't care about any of that. I don't care if you want to have an abortion or for your reasons. That's between you and God. That's not for me. I don't care. I really don't. That's none of my business. Uh, and that's just the way I am about things. And there ain't no RD or I, that goes along with those beliefs. My God, you got to believe one way or the other, right? No, I don't care. I don't think you deserve special treatment because you're one or the other or whatever. I think we're all just the same. We bleed the same. You know, we make out of our lives what we make out of our lives. So I don't care how you choose what you choose to do is all on you. It's like me telling you can't make vodka. Who the hell am I telling you? You can only make whiskey, damn you. You can't do that, but you can't make them little stainless steel Philly girl drinks, right? You gotta make copper bourbon, right, Scott? That's right. They'll be working for us, won't they? That'll be our bitch then. That's a fact. Yeah, they starting to turn over there, man. Yeah, it is. What's going on, Worthy? Yeah, man. Wayne can, man. I tell you, when it comes to welding and butt joining and stuff, I mean, he can make it seamless, bro. I mean, you're like taking a magnifying glass looking for the fucking seam, right? Good fucking top notch work, man. And very creative and very intelligent man. Very scientific and smart. A pretty good guy. I'm glad he's my friend. I like old Wayne. He I think his talents would be better served if he did a podcast with creativity and building and that. But hopefully we can get him on doing podcasts about mocking up work and patterns and teach people how to weld and solder better and fabrication. Yeah, he's top notch builder. Oh shit, it's 11 o'clock. Oh, I'm about caught up. Damn, 10:55. Well, shit. I'm just 10 minutes behind now. I'm scrolling through and picking up. Absolutely, they're fine. Just cut them up, and throw them in there. You can, I mean, you can grind them. I just throw them in a blender and mulch them up real good and cut them up. They call it what do they call it? Steel cut oats, or you can toast them. And use them if you want to get a little unique flavor. You can toast the oats before you put them in. There's lots of different things you can do with oats. They're good. I like them. Cornish deer. Got them little fallow deer down there in Florida. Cornish deer. That's funny as fuck, man. I've never heard that. Oh, yeah, that's good. I like it. Cornish deer. That's good, Cave Daddy. What's going on down in Mexico? What's happening? Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year's. Feliz Navidad and all that good stuff, brother. Yeah. Maybe we can get somebody down there in Mexico send us some of that blue agave up here pretty cheap. What do you think? Damn, it's expensive up here, brother. Might have to go down there and do a little border run. But I'm gonna butcher your name. Is Law? Is Lou? I don't know, man. I hope I'm saying it. Isla. Isla. Islo. Isla. Maybe I can do a Google and pronounce. Ezlau. Is that Spanish? Let me see. Isla is not a common English word. No shit. That's why I'm asking you to pronounce it, Google. No, it's not even good. They don't even have it on there. Terrible. Anyway, welcome. Yeah, hopefully we can get us a line on some yellow, some that blue agave from down there. I'd love to have a big tote of it. What's going on, Jeff? Yeah, the 3 gallon becomes a thumper, right? Yeah, they're not the best. That's for sure. I don't like the 3 pots. I mean, they can be okay once you convert them, especially the bigger ones. 10, 13s. It's a pretty good sized pot, and they can be, drilled and retapped, and and put some larger fittings on there. But yeah, but yeah, it's going to require some work. Those gaskets on those things were horrible. I think Phil, Billy, and them carry those now too, so people can repair them because they were the worst thing about them. And just like that, yeah, that blue agave, man. Hell yeah. I want a tote. And I'm caught up, and it's about 11 o'clock. Imagine that, man. It took me a little scrolling, though. I hope I didn't miss any questions. If I did, uh, get them in there because we're about to wrap her up. But it's a good show. And a lot of good questions, a lot of good conversation. Got a little bit political now, but everybody knows where we all stand. I mean, when it boils down to fundamental things like safety and happiness, I think we all can agree on things. That's like, you know, I can't imagine some, saying less taxes is good, and somebody saying no, it's not. Damn it, more taxes is good. Who does that, right? So I think there's a lot of things that we do agree on. Uh, we might not necessarily always like the messenger, but I think we all need to step back and love one another like we used to, and love and respect each other, and respect each other's opinions. And remember, it's just an opinion. So what you're thinking isn't a fact; it's just your opinion. Uh, so we can all voice our opinions and be happy, and still laugh and drink together and call each other brother. Um, but that's what we need to get back to, is understanding, and get rid of this hostility and this polarity that they got everybody so wound up and at each other's throat, and what for? Just because somebody, a little bit judgmental on whether you should be able to take your baby's life or not, or whatever. That's that's an opinion. My thoughts are they'll have to deal with God when it comes time. If that's the way it is. They don't answer to me. Yeah, you can toast. Yeah, and any of your grains that you're not using for the amylase or anything, that you can always toast. I mean, look at what all they do with barley, man. I mean, they do so many creative things with the barley. I mean, that's because it's a beer. Can you imagine all the creative things you could do with the corn if they got that You know, if corn liquor ever got as popular as beer, all the different things they can do with corn, you know, other than just heirlooms and stuff. You know, can you imagine a chocolate corn, crystal corn? Yeah, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's 11:11. I'm gonna have to give old Miss Claus a little kissy kiss before she goes to bed. She's got to work tomorrow, so. And Spernanza's calling, man. I'm taking the dime. I'm going into Spernanza. So those of you who don't know, I like to play games. Get on the. I'm an old time gamer. I've been playing games since I was a kid. And Nintendos when they first came out, and I enjoy it. And it's a good pastime for me and keeps my hand coordination up. Even though I'm getting fumbling and drop shit all the time, it's a lot of fun. I got some buddies online that we play with together, and we have good times. A lot of good fun and yeah, we have a little shot before we go. And Happy New Year to everybody. And let's hope that 2026 brings a little more happiness and to the people in the states here, and a little more understanding and less hostilities, right? This blackberry pineapple is a pretty interesting combination. I had I did pineapple and I did some blackberry, and alone they were okay. But combined, it just I like the combined flavors, so I mix them all up. All right, we'll see everybody Tuesday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. For those of you that are new, welcome, and bring your questions, and definitely join the DIY Shine and stuff, or the DIY Shine and Steel Building now page on Facebook, and the Moonshine Militia. And bring your questions. We can help you. We will walk you through it step for step. There's a lot of people in there. They're very patient, knowledgeable, and there to answer your questions pretty much 24/7. Don't get mad if you. Sometimes you'll get it answered quicker than here. Maybe not quicker than Clint does, but quicker than I can get around to it. But yeah, it's great, and we want more participation. So again, you can make an alias in there, nickname, so you don't have to. People won't know exactly who you are except for the admin, so you won't have to worry about that. So definitely join us, and everybody have a great 2026. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you guys and gals back here on Tuesday at 8 Eastern. Till then, shine on, peace out, love y'all, and have a good weekend.